D Mace, Vingan and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you on a frigid Monday morning in Nashville. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving and a wonderful weekend. It's been a minute since we've been on the air. We had a 4-day weekend.
Felt so good.
Whoop, whoop.
Felt so good.
It reminded me of when I was in college and closer to the my second half of college, where I would just stack all of my classes the beginning of the week and have 4 or 5 day weekends regularly. I would just be in class all day Monday and Tuesday. Then I wouldn't have class Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and of course Saturday, Sunday. But I missed everybody.
So it was always, they knew what Adam was. Either he's in class all day on those 2 or 3 days, or he's in his room.
Probably playing
or the library,
video games.
Or playing,
yeah.
Pokemon.
Were you chasing Pokemon around campus?
Despite what some of you might believe, I was not in to Pokemon Go. I did not play Pokemon Go. I played Pokemon Snap, which was a game on Nintendo 64, but I digress.
Okay.
Let's not worry about how big of a nerd I was, and I still am. But
that's the part we love about you, too.
Well,
man.
I appreciate that. So, you all probably had a wonderful Thanksgiving, family time, friend time, delicious food. Put on your sweatpants, unbuttoned your jeans, sat on the couch, watched some football. Good feelings, right? The Tennessee Titans. They had some good feelings last week. They go to Houston. They win a game on the road that nobody really expected them to win. I know that Derek actually predicted the Titans to win, but most people did not expect the Titans to be competitive in the game against the Texans last week. They win. Some optimism is building, right? Hey, what could this mean? The schedule is lightening up down the stretch, and then they completely pooped their pants yesterday in Washington. The Titans lose 42-19 to the Commanders. By the way, not in Washington, in Landover, Maryland. Let's get this straight. That game was over in a flash. If you blinked, you might have missed it. 28-0. 4 touchdowns on 4 drives to open the game for the Washington Commanders. Now, to the Titans' credit, they fought back a little bit in the second half, but at the end of the day, still another big loss to the Commanders on Sunday. I was sorry, Willie. I was surprised, and then I'll hand it over to you. I wasn't really sure how this game would go, to be honest with you. I did predict that the Titans would cover. I thought that with the Commanders struggling and the Titans building off of some positive momentum against the Texans, this game would be close. I certainly did not expect them to be down by 3 touchdowns before the end of the first quarter.
My parents were staying at my cousin's house. She lives about a mile, maybe a mile and a couple tenths away from our house in East Nashville. My parents left the house to walk from my cousin's house to my house to watch the game. They left the house at kickoff, and they got there, and it was 21-0. They sat down to watch the game. It was 21-0.
Oh, man. Luckily, they didn't have to watch.
Yeah,
the first couple of minutes. Yeah,
that's the bright side.
Yeah,
the
bright side. Yeah,
despite
absolutely.
the disappointment of, oh man, it's already 21-0.
Yeah.
Like, well, at least you missed the
debacle.
The debacle at the beginning, yeah. But that was shockingly bad, and that's another game, unfortunately, where they just handed the game away. They never gave themselves a chance to compete. Starting the game with 2 false starts, bringing nothing to the table in terms of intensity, life, anything to build it. It was the opposite of what you hoped you would see, building on the good performance the week before, the confidence boost. So it was a total nightmare. There's just no way around it.
This is a team that doesn't know how to, or hasn't figured out how to stack wins. This is a bad team, and bad teams don't know how to consistently win. They can't, for whatever reason, put it together consistently. Maybe it's because they're sort of, still, in the prior weeks sort of aura or whatnot. I don't know what it is, but What I do know is good teams figure out how to put together back-to-back wins, regardless of what the situation is, and bad teams can't figure it out, or bad teams take a victory and they sort of in prime time. Deion Sanders said this perfectly. It's intoxicating, so much so that you wallow in it a little bit too long, and you don't understand or realize that you got to come out of it because you got another game to play. You sort of sit in this euphoria of, we finally won a game, and it was against the Houston Texans, and it was our owner's arch rival. Not to mind you, it's not my arch rival, it's the owner's arch rival. So you live in this state of euphoria of, we won, we beat the Houston Texans. As if the Houston Texans was, the second coming of the New England Patriots with Tom Brady, or the second coming of the Kansas City Chiefs. As they sit now, you beat a team that hasn't been playing well, that has some injuries, that basically shot themselves in the foot the last game, and you were able to take advantage of it. That's great. But you lived in that euphoria too long. And this is what it got you. I texted you guys. I was like, it looked like they were still in the locker room. And I've been a part of games like that where you come out, and it's not because of the weeks prior victory. It's just because you come out and you think you're ready, and then all of a sudden, they hit you fast and quick, and you find out, man, we're not ready. Can we restart this game? Can we go back in the locker room and then come out? That's how the Titans look, as if they were still in the locker room, still on that high from winning last week, when that last week win didn't mean a damn thing to the season. It meant a lot to the owner. I get it. I understand that part, but it meant a damn thing to your season. But I think they sort of took it as, oh, we beat the Houston Texans, and man, we're on our way, as if they beat them to go to the AFC Championship game. You beat them so you wouldn't look bad this week, coming into the week. You beat them because this was supposedly the big game for your owner. The big game for your owner should be in the Super Bowl. Not a damn week, not a damn in-season game. But again, I understand that part. But don't put so much emphasis into that win. It was a win. It was a great win. It was a good win. It wasn't even a great win. It was a good win. Now we got to stack another one on top of another one. And they haven't been able to do that. Again, they lived in that euphoria of beating the damn Houston Texans. You beat the Houston Texans, and y'all lived in that euphoria. Like, oh, it feels so good. That's not a mark of a winning team. And I believe that Brian Callahan will get them to that point. But you got to clean out some of this stuff of these guys. You win a game, and all of a sudden now y'all feel like y'all back on top of the world. Damn it, y'all haven't even landed on the world. How in the hell you gonna be back on top of it?
Willie, you alluded to this, but let's start with that first.
I'm not angry, though. I'm just stating.
You're just disappointed.
Yeah, I'm just
disappointed. I'm not angry.
Yeah,
you're
I'm
just disappointed. Which is worse than being angry.
It is.
When your parents say, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed.
Oh, you feel bad.
It hurts even more.
Oh.
So let's start with the first drive of the game. The Titans get the ball first. First play from scrimmage. False start. J.C. Latham. 5 yards. So it's 1st and 15. They give the ball to Tony Pollard. He gets 1 back. Third play from scrimmage. 2nd and 14. False start. Nicholas Petit-Frere. So they're at third and 22. Actually, because then Tony Pollard went backwards. So they were at 3rd and 22 on their first drive. Then they ended up, of course, punting the ball, and the Commanders then scored the first of 4 consecutive touchdowns. But that first drive, Willie, 2 false starts in 3 plays to start the game. The Titans had 11 penalties in the first half, and I saw this in multiple places. It was the most first half penalties in a game by a team in 13 years. 2011, I believe it was the 49ers, had 11 accepted penalties in the first half of a game. So the first time in 13 years, a team committed 11 penalties in the first half of a game, and 2 right off the bat.
Well, I was reading Jim Wyatt's recap of the game, and he alluded to 1 or 2 other debacles that he's seen in his time. And I can go back as far as Jim in terms of watching from the beginning of the franchise. he alluded to the 59-0
Mhm.
debacle in Foxborough way back in 2009, I think it was, where it was 35-0 at the half. I can think of another few games probably from the Ken Wisenhunt era.
Hell, you can go back to as early as the Lions game, as recently as the Lions game. That debacle early
But
on,
in the
fumbles and all this
Okay,
other
but in the
stuff.
first half, they had some plays to Calvin Ridley, and they went and scored a couple touchdowns in the first half. That wasn't nearly as bad. This was, I'm coming to this game bringing absolutely nothing to the table. I have no money. I have no shoes. I have no shirt. I'm not even going to be left in the restaurant. It's like Jeff Spicoli when they say, Jeff, what does that sign say?
No shoes, no shirt, no dice.
That's right. I mean, that's what they showed up with nothing. They weren't ready to play. Nobody had any fire. The Washington team could have been running dummy offense against air. The only thing it wasn't, if the play didn't work, there was probably a penalty on the Titans. They gave them a do-over. There were so many successful plays. It's like, let's draw up a play. Let's see if it works this way. We'll get this block over here, this hole up over here, and this is where the play will go. Every single play from the outset was a success, with the exception of one or two mixed in here and there. That was the exception. So I don't know that you can blame one guy or one area, because it was everything. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. It was laughable. My family's watching the game. My family's not hardcore Titans fans. They were watching because I was into it. We just had to laugh. Oh, what else could you do? Here's a good play for 15 yards. Up, flag on the play. I wonder what this flag is. Holding. It's coming back. I mean, it's pathetic. But the thing about it is, I really thought they had a game where they had a chance to show everybody we're making strides. Here's where we're progressing. And all of that really collapsed in the first half. And at that point, anything in the second half, you want to grasp at straws and say, well, you started playing better in the second half. Not really. I mean, they gave you a chance. If you could punch in a couple to the end zone and it's 28-21, okay, now we're talking you're back in the game. But they never did that. They can't execute a snap. They can't get in from the red zone. A couple of field goals. That never made Washington sweat.
That first red zone trip was tough to watch.
Yeah,
for the Titans.
That's the thing. Like, if you're showing me you're making strides, okay, and you have a horrible first half, but then it gets to 28-21 and you stay in the game the rest of the way, then you can make the case, okay, better in the second half. We'll pick it up next week. We'll pick up where we left off. Bad half. Let's put that behind us. But the second half, you had a chance, maybe, if you really were making strides to make the game interesting, but the game did not get interesting because Washington got bored, right? When it's that easy, the other team is going to get bored. Only when you challenge them do they have to turn it back up, and that's what happened.
And that's what I was just about to say, Willie. That's what it felt like. It felt like, for all of y'all that have, younger siblings or maybe even older siblings, when you're playing your older sibling or you're playing your younger sibling and you get up on them and pick up basketball, you get up on them by 15 points. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, you start trying new moves and throwing up the basket. And it's like, okay. And then they cut it to 5 points. And you're like, all right, let me turn it back on again. Let me go on the low post and just dominate you again because I'm just bigger. And then you get back and then you get up, 25-10 or 30-10. I just turn it on when I need to turn it on because you bore me. That's how I felt watching that game last night. It was like, okay, they got out. The Titans did a lot of things that pretty much sabotaged themselves. They got up. And then all of a sudden, it was like, all right, we got this game. And then the Titans started to make a push, and they scored a touchdown. And then Washington said, you know what? Forget about this. Let's stop playing with them. Let's just run our offense. They can't stop it. Everything they ran, I don't think the Titans stopped. Literally, I don't think that it was a drop pass or a penalty. Everything that basically Washington ran, it wasn't stopped. Washington stopped themselves pretty much.
615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So if you want to join the conversation, you can do so by calling us or texting us at 615-737-1025. And speaking of which, Chris is on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com with a comment on the Titans. Chris, welcome in. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, that was just a horrible game to watch. One of the worst Titans games I've seen, and I've been a fan since the beginning. But what bothers me, after all the positive talk after the Houston win last week, they come out and look like that. I mean, they look like they had just finished eating their Thanksgiving dinner and rolled off the sofa and tried to play a game. I mean, it was pathetic. And I'm starting to – I want Callahan to be our coach so bad going forward, but all this undisciplined play, the penalties and not looking like they're ready to play, and then the defense. And I'm tired of Big Jeff mouthing off and getting all mad. He was a non-factor yesterday. The defensive line was horrible. And I don't know how long Miss Amy will put up with this coaching staff.
Chris, thank you for the call. And we'll get to something that Jeffrey Simmons said here in a bit, because I would love to get Derek's reaction to it. I know that Chase McCabe is on pins and needles live from Key West, Florida, because he mentioned it at the end of their show that he wants to hear what you have to say about something that Jeffrey Simmons says. But Willie, you sent a breakdown of the penalty issues that this team has had over the course of the season. They've committed 100 total penalties, which is the second most in the NFL behind the Baltimore Ravens. Those 100 penalties have led to 758 penalty yards, which is the fourth most in the NFL. And of all the different sorts of penalties we've seen from the Titans, they have 22 false starts, which is tied with the Cleveland Browns for the most in the NFL. And as I said, 11 penalties in the first half, the most by a team in the first half since 2011. The caller mentioned Brian Callahan. I mean, the penalty troubles, it falls on him. I mean, I know the players have to know how to line up correctly and not move before the snap, but it's on the coach to find that sort of discipline that seems to be lacking from his group.
What's the ceiling for the talent of this team? It's probably mediocre. If you overachieve, maybe they could have eked out 9 or 10 wins. We'll never know. But how does a team that's middling in talent at best win in the NFL, win close games? You win on the margins. And I looked at 3 things today, and to me, these are 3 big things that have less to do with your weapons and your talent, but how do you play together? The penalties were a big one for me, and that is what you just sort of illustrated. They're the second most penalized team. Now take the Ravens. The Ravens have way more weapons, ability to dig themselves out of holes because they just have better players. Now, you could probably sit there in Baltimore if you're a Ravens fan going, we could have won 2 or 3 more games. Like their record should be better with the talent that they have. The penalties are probably bringing them down a notch. The Titans can't overcome that. The Titans, it's not also just the penalties. It's when they occur. I tried to find a stat on an analytics site. I haven't found it yet, but I wonder if anybody tracks the impactful penalties that keep drives alive, penalties that negate positive plays for you. I feel like that in the eye test is a major minus for the Titans.
I might be able to help you out.
Well,
there.
thank you. I thought I might have come to the right store.
I might be able to help you out there. This courtesy of John Glennon. John Glennon tweeted this before our program with help from NFL penalty data on Twitter/X. According to John Glennon, the Titans rank first in these 4 penalty categories. They are first in penalties resulting in an automatic first down. They've committed 27 such penalties. They are first in penalties resulting in an automatic first down on third down. They have 7 of those penalties.
Very demoralizing.
They are first in penalties on 3rd and 6 or more yards with 11. And they are first in penalties on 3rd and 10 or more, or 4th and 6 or more with 7. So
that doesn't That's a good start. The only thing that doesn't address is, like, the Vikings game would be the extreme, the illegal formation that negates big plays, touchdown, game
Right.
swinging kind of plays. There were a couple in the first half that, maybe a drive starter gets you going a little bit, holding negates a good play. The drive killers kind of things, back-to-back false starts to start the game, drive killers. There's rarely a good penalty, but there are some penalties that are worse than others.
They're just not good enough to have those what we call them pre-snap penalties. You're not good enough to have pre-snap penalties. I can see penalties in the act of play are a little bit, you accept them a little bit more than you would a pre-snap penalty, because pre-snap is all about concentrating, attention to detail, knowing the snap count, things like that. That's why when you get pre-snap penalties, coaches go crazy. Like, seriously? Like, the play hadn't even started. The quarterback just told you it was on 1 or 2, and you go out and you get a legal procedure. Who does that? Coaches, they don't take kindly to those if they happen repeatedly. Now, holdings, you can call that on every play. I mean, stuff like that, coaches tend to give a pass at times, unless you're just not working your proper technique and you get off the ball late, or you just wasn't where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there in regards to blocking. But what really gets on a head coach's nerves is the pre and the post snap penalties. Though that's all about being disciplined. That's all that is. So right now, you have a team that is not as disciplined as you want them to be. And that's not a good thing. On top of that, you're not good enough at this stage of the season, nor were you at the beginning of the season, to overcome when you have penalties like this. You see teams out there that can overcome. I watch teams that getting 1st and 15 or 1st and 20. I look at them and I don't worry. I'm like, they'll pick up probably 8 yards right now, and they'll come back and pick up 4 yards, and they'll get the first down. With the Tennessee Titans, anytime they get into 1st and 15 or 1st and 20, I'm like, man, they're going to get ready
They're
to
in
punt.
trouble.
Yeah, they're in trouble. They're not good enough to dig themselves out of 1st and 15 or 1st and 20s.
615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your calls and texts on our phone lines, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Coming up next, there were a couple of things that were said after the game yesterday that I can't wait to hear how Derek Mason reacts to them. So we will do that next. Before we get there, however, this week's Nashville Best Deal is from Tito's Mexican Restaurant. Known for its vibrant flavors and festive atmosphere, it brings the heart of Mexico to Middle Tennessee. Enjoy mouth-watering tacos, sizzling fajitas, and delicious enchiladas, all served with a side of authentic Mexican flair. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at thegamenashville.com/deals. D. Mace, Vingan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you. Mike is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Mike, as I understand it, you were at the game yesterday. I hope the Titans gave you a refund.
Not likely. I have a question for Mr. Mason, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Yeah, we went to the game, me and my son, along with a couple of friends who were Washington fans. Thought it was a good time to have a guys' weekend. I mean, my son did get to see the National Archives, and so it was kind of educational from that standpoint. But I just wanted, especially at the end of the first quarter, we were in the lower bowl, to go down and just like scream at these guys. Do you all not care that people have traveled, spent money, come to watch you all? And yes, I bet on the Titans on the money line because I'm not going to bet against my team. But if you if you told me your life depends on it, who's going to win this game, I would have said Washington. But like zero effort whatsoever at the very start. And so my question is, do players even talk about that? Do they even care that, you have a fan base that, is behind them and will come see them? Granted, it's not like Nissan Stadium where, it's, a large amount of Titans fans, but there were a lot of people there yesterday. Does that even come up in player conversations like, guys, we owe it to these people because they're trying to support us? And I'll hang up and listen. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for your call, Mike. Listen, in that moment, no, we don't care. I'm just putting it to you, frank and honest. We don't care. That's not what we're thinking about. We're not thinking about the fans coming and traveling. It happens and you appreciate it, but you're not thinking when you get your rear ends beat that bad. You don't think, man, we let no, you're not thinking that way. But we do, as athletes, appreciate fans coming out to support. But that's not the first thing on our minds. That's not the first thing on the head coach's mind. That's not the first thing on the trainer's mind. Hell, that's not even the first thing on the owner's mind. They're not thinking about that. They're thinking about their team. How do they get their team fixed? How do we fix what's on the product on the field? We're not thinking at that moment, nor are we thinking really during the season, the fan engagement. We appreciate it. Don't get us wrong. Don't get me wrong. We appreciate it. But that's like saying, a firefighter or somebody, somebody doing their job and they're getting paid to do it. They're not thinking about, how much you should appreciate us coming out and help you. And you should be grateful for us. And every time you see us, you should pat us up. No, we're not thinking that's a job. We got to do a job. And our job for policemen and firefighters are to save people. They don't worry about, how many people are patting them on their back, because if they're doing a job because of that, they're not doing the job, period. So football players, athletes are the same way. We appreciate it, but in the moment, that's not something that we're thinking about. Like, man, we let the fan base down once we come in the locker room. Again, we appreciate it as players, as athletes, no matter what sport. But at that moment or during that season, we're not really too honed in, especially after a loss. We're trying to fix what's going on wrong rather than to, think about, man, we're letting the fan base down. That comes later on down the line, after the season or during a bye week, when we don't have to think too much about football or the X's and O's, so to speak. So hopefully that answered this question.
So Jeffrey Simmons, and I believe it was Jarvis Brownlee, had comments after the game yesterday that when I heard them, I thought to myself, man, I can't wait to hear what Derek has to say about these comments. And David, our fearless producer, keeps us all in line. He mashed them up for us. So these are the comments. Is Jeffrey Simmons first? Jeffrey Simmons is first, followed by Jarvis Brownlee.
Yep.
These are their comments after the game yesterday.
It wasn't about nobody being immature. At the end of the day, we just have to learn how to just say, okay, yes, we won. But can we build off that? We have a lot of young players, but at the end of the day, like I said, it's everybody's job to be able to, come ready to play again. This is National Football League. They lost 3 in a row. They coming hungry for a win as well. So at the end of the day, like I said, we was hungover. We was hungover from a success from last week, and that showed in the first half. Coming out 28-0, like I said, it's going to be hard to win this league.
So I don't think guys was locked in anymore. I think guys let the cold get to them. Because, I mean, I'm a Florida guy. I don't like the cold, but I know what comes with playing in this profession. And sometimes, you know, you're going to have to play through things that you don't like. And I think guys let the cold affect them. You know, a lot of guys need to say it. That's what I think.
Okay, I appreciate the Curb Your Enthusiasm music.
The music was
underneath it.
appropriate for
Yes.
those two comments.
I appreciate the Curb Your Enthusiasm music. Now, to be fair, David was going to play that coming back from break, and I asked him to play it during the segment, so that's on me. But it did add a touch of levity to the situation. So, where would you guys like to start?
Well, first of all, Brownlee is a rookie. I give him a pass to a degree. Just maybe not having the scope. That's not the time to make the comment. About the weather.
By the way, I believe
look,
the kickoff temperature there was
I
about the same as it was here yesterday.
Right. I like Brownlee. I think he battles. I think he is a guy that could go either way. He could be a guy that's just a guy that plays a couple years in the league and then moves on and he's gone. And you can tell everybody he got to start in the NFL for a while. Or he could, if he works on a few things, I think he could become a viable corner for a while. But this is the kind of thing the Titans need to win some of these battles. Some of these players need to find a way to continue to get better. That's why the setback yesterday hurts so bad. Simmons, honestly, if I don't know if he chose the right words. Hungover, that's the one word that's going to have the wrong connotation. It's got a connotation. What his point, what he was making, not building on the success, that's the point he was making. And that is the right point. That's a tough lesson learned and a devastating lesson for a team that is grasping to try to build some kind of foundation. And it's unfortunate. I would not have used that word, but I get what he was saying. I don't think it's the wrong point. I think he was trying to make the right point there in his defense. So, but what happens? One word gets in a sentence in print, and it gets spun the wrong way.
Both of them were something that if I'm a PR person, I would say, don't say that and don't say that.
Right.
Those are the two things that I would put up at the beginning of the season and say, these are the things you don't say after a loss. You don't, interject the weather, nor do you interject hangover. Those two words are not good. So you can say anything else, but let's not resort to those two words.
Right. But for the words are wrong.
Yeah.
And Brownlee, I don't the weather, that's irrelevant. You can't bring that. That's not right.
Listen,
but he's a rookie. I'm giving him a pass.
Brownlee's gonna find out pretty soon here. Dude, it's only gonna get colder.
It's gonna go.
There's a game that had snow in it yesterday.
If that's the case, then none of y'all would have came out versus the Buffalo Bills this past weekend. Nobody. Y'all all would have stayed in, nestled and huddled around a little bonfire, and y'all have just had hot chocolate and s'mores. That's what y'all would have did in the locker room.
But with Simmons, I have seen. Look, I went to Vanderbilt. I played for Vanderbilt. I've watched Vanderbilt football. The trap that always gets thrown out there, and every coach I played two different sports. Both coaches had the same thing. Look, if you think that you're the most talented team in this league because you've won a couple games, you're going to learn the hard way that that's not the case. You can't start thinking you're good because you won a game and beat a good team. That's the point that Jeffrey Simmons is making. So I get that, especially as a Vanderbilt guy, because Vanderbilt, you're not going to have the horses in most cases. Now, Tim Corbin's baseball teams, they've got the horses,
of course,
more years than not. That's a different story. But when you are sort of the underdog and you're trying to build something, the last thing you can do is start to think you're good when your record is 3-8. And I think that's what Simmons was saying. And he's the leader. Part of his responsibility is making sure that they had that message. And unfortunately, they didn't get the message.
I
Well,
think
here,
that Jeffrey Simmons, I'm sorry, Derek. I think that Jeffrey Simmons, and we've talked about this over the course of the season, I think Jeffrey Simmons is sort of miscast in this role as the quote unquote spokesperson of the locker room. You know, Kevin Byard played that role. Derrick Henry played that role. Ryan Tannehill played that role.
Jarrell Casey,
Jarrell
Keith
Casey.
Bullock. I mean, you go through the years; they've had some.
This is
good
not
ones.
Jeffrey Simmons's strong suit, being the vocal leader of the team, and because of the situation they find themselves in roster wise, and as the as I would say that most people would recognize. Would you say that most people outside of Nashville would recognize Jeffrey Simmons as the Titans' best player?
No, they probably still would say Derrick Henry because they don't know that Derrick Henry's not on the Titans anymore.
Okay.
They would say Derrick. First thing they would say Derrick Henry, and then they say, "Oh, he's with the Ravens."
But after
Yeah,
they
he's with the
realize that
Ravens.
Derrick Henry is no longer here, do you think that most people who don't follow the Titans regularly assume that Jeffrey Simmons?
I wonder if they could even name a Titan. Really,
Jeffrey Simmons would be probably
because he's a
the guy.
defensive, defensive lineman. Yeah.
Okay, here's the problem with all of this. I understand what you're saying, Willie and Adam, him being a spokesman. Just look at it from this standpoint. You are the leader of the organization, the team. Let's just say that. Tell me how many times, because this is not the first time Jeff has said something and did something, and you're like, dude, what's going on? Even, a couple weeks ago, we are a much better team. I'm thinking like, dude, your record says who you are. You can't try to convince us that you're a better team, but your record says this is who you are as a team. Now, whether you think it or not, it's a different story. But people tend to fall on deaf ears when they see week after week after week after week y'all doing the same things, but yet and still you're throwing a message at us. We're a good team. No, people don't spit on me and tell me it's raining. I know you're spitting. I see you on that building. Don't try to convince me that it's rain. We know who y'all are. Y'all can try to keep that within a locker room, but don't try to push that out to the masses like we're a good team. Everybody knows and believes you're not a good team. Can you be a good team in the future? Absolutely. Are you a good player, Jeffrey Simmons? Absolutely. But don't try to convince us this is a good team when we know, in fact, it's not a good team. So with that being said, when you come in as a spokesman or a leader on this team, you got to understand the message that you send out is a critical message, especially this when you're in this sort of situation. You can't use words like hangover. You've been in this league too long to know certain things you cannot say and should not say after getting your ass kicked on national television. You can't say those things. Okay. And having hangover, you're not a good enough team to tell everybody it was a hangover. No, you're not that good to have a hangover. When in society, we're in the sports where you can be one of the worst teams in your league, win a game, and then say we had hangover the next following game. You're not allowed to say that because your team isn't that good. Listen, I keep it 100 when it comes to this stuff. You can get mad at me, you may not. Okay, because I'm gonna call it how I see it. If you're playing good, I'm gonna say, man, you are playing great. But if you're playing bad consistently, I'm going to say you're playing bad. I'm just telling you what I see. And then when you go up there and say hangover, there could be a guy, Will Levis could say, man, I didn't have a hangover. I came out the ball. The guys in front of me wasn't doing their job. Guys were dropping passes. I came to ball. Don't put that hangover stuff on me. I came out here. Speak for yourself. That's where that comes in. That's why I don't like that. Don't sit here and say we had a hangover. No, you had the hangover because you was getting your ass pushed off the line just about every play. That was embarrassing play by Jeffrey Simmons. That's the first time that I've watched Jeffrey Simmons and I said, damn, that's embarrassing. That is the first time. Every other time, Jeff goes out there and give it his all, and he's not getting pushed around. He may not make the tackle, but he's not getting pushed around. Yesterday, he got pushed around. He got treated like a little kid yesterday. Those Garden centers, they were on him like white on rice, and they wouldn't let up, and he couldn't do anything. He got pushed more times that game, I think, than any other game that I've watched him play. So when you say hangover, say me, not us, because I guarantee you, Will Levis, the game wasn't great, but it wasn't because of Will Levis they lost that game. Will Levis didn't have a hangover. So you can't put that on everybody. Say me. It was me. Don't try to lump me in with you. That's why I dislike it from that standpoint.
615-737-1025. There is something else that Jeffrey Simmons said weeks ago. We're going back a couple of months, but there's something that Jeffrey Simmons said weeks ago that has bitten him in the rear end a couple of times, but especially yesterday. We'll get to that next. Willie Dunick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Hey, this is Derek Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds, only to come up short. But at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands your frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Stay with me here because I'm going to give you some solutions. The comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you. I told you I was going to give you some solutions. There are a few solutions for you. The other solution is connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you. Eric has been waiting patiently on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Eric, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys, I hope y'all had a great Thanksgiving. I hope all the listeners had it one, too. Mine was pretty good until yesterday. I got home from church, turned on the television, saw it was 21-0, saw Jeffrey Simmons' helmet off with that, I guess it was played where it was sportsmanlike conduct against Washington. But then, of course, the very next play I saw where Jackson had fumbled the next kickoff after Pollard had fumbled previously before he had the back. So it was just so frustrating to see that. The 5 penalties on offense, 5 penalties on defense, the 2 on special teams. It was just all-around bad game. And I also heard that Roger Goodell was at the game. He picked that game to come to, which is probably the worst game in the NFL, still being in the best game, Philadelphia and Baltimore. Maybe he went to that afterwards since it was nearby. I don't know. But, guys, my question is, this is concerning the defense. I know last week we gave up. I mean, we were so good against Joe Mixon and his running ability. But then we had that game yesterday. We gave up 267 yards rushing. And I've heard some talk earlier this morning talking about the game plan with the coordinator that we got from Baltimore about, guys, I don't know, was it just yesterday injuries? Because I know we had some of that yesterday. Just players playing out of position scheme, whatever it was. But it seemed like, I don't know if we could just make the adjustments that was needed to stop that. It was just personnel. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because I was surprised that we couldn't make adjustments or do anything to stop that. It's just like Washington just kind of had their way with our defense. And that kind of surprised me, and just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. Guys, it's always good to talk to you. Y'all take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for calling, Eric. So before the break, I said there was something that Jeffrey Simmons said early in the season, that whenever the Titans have a poor performance, it does come to bite him in the rear end. David, if you please.
At the end of the day, since I've been here in Tennessee, and I've been preaching this message since I've been here, since, that's kind of what got brought to my attention. No one run the ball on the Tennessee Titans defense. So I think our mindset is, and one of our defensive goals this week is to stop the run. So no matter who have the ball in their hand, we have to swarm to the ball, make sure everybody gets to the ball, and quite frankly, we need to get the ball off them. So
nobody runs on the Tennessee Titans. By the way, if I recall correctly, he said that before week 3 when the Titans played the Packers. The Packers had 188 rushing yards in that game, which was the most against the Titans this season, ... until yesterday, when the Commanders had 267 rushing yards against the Titans on 45 carries. So it was like roughly 6 yards a carry.
And it was in the first half. It's one thing to give up a lot of running yards when the game's over and they're running the clock out. You're going to give up some yards there. It's over. 23 for 147 in the first half. So, look, I like the mentality. That's what you're trying to do. You're establishing. And honestly, they did. Like Eric pointed out, they did a great job on that last week. That should be something you're leaning on. What was it about the scheme yesterday, D-Mace? Because it looked like they gashed them on several plays up the middle. They found something that obviously it doesn't look like other teams have tried, because it popped wide open. What was the block? Was it a trap block or something? What were they doing?
They were trap blocking and were bringing those guards and centers and tackles. They were pulling them, and they were getting, whether it be Jeffrey Simmons or Devondre Sweat, they were getting them in positions where they were cut off blocks and they were just running right around them. It almost seemed as if they had the Tennessee Titans defensive front playbook. Like nothing seemed to work. And it got to a point where not only were they pushing guys down the field, it was like they didn't even have a chance.
Yeah, it felt like I could have gotten some yards.
Yeah, it was
like
it was perfectly executed blocking. I hadn't watched the Washington Commanders much this season, and I can't tell you that, in watching them, I was watching their offensive line, but I have to have believed after yesterday, if I'm a Washington Commander fan, that probably was the best blocking that I had seen in a very long time from a team. Just what they were able to do and get such gaping holes.
I do have some numbers that illustrate the issues that the Titans had yesterday. So on designed runs, the Commanders had 246 yards, which was a season high for them. They were most effective between the tackles, recording the most rushing yards, 189, explosive runs, 4, which I believe is runs of 10-plus yards, and yards before contact per carry, 3.1 on design runs against the Titans defense in the game this season.
That to me is the one where there was with the eye test. It was like any running back. You could have given it to anybody. And I realized that McNichols is still in the league. He was with the Titans like 17 years ago for a couple of years. Not
and
a bad
Will
little player.
Levis's old
I didn't know
too,
he was
right?
in the
Chris Rodriguez.
Yeah, I didn't know McNichols was still in the league, and he's getting 5-6 yards a carry. It didn't matter who they were giving it to. The play design was the thing that was just popping wide open. That's what was really head scratching to me.
But here's the other issue, because it was pick your poison. Basically, that's what it was. And people, when I say that, I mean, listen, am I going to stop the run or am I going to stop the pass? Because when you're playing a quarterback like Jaden Daniels or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts, that ability for the quarterback to get outside the pocket, to run inside the pocket on design runs or just broken down plays is monumental. When you have that, you have an extra added weapon that helps out across the board.
He's the real deal.
Yeah. So now you gotta pay attention to not just the running back, but the quarterback keeping the ball and running, him keeping the ball on broken down plays. And then if we want to sit out here and play man to man like they did, or play 5 yards off or 8 yards off like they did, I could just toss it to my receivers. So yesterday was a perfect storm in a sense of we ran the ball, we figured out what they were doing from a defensive front standpoint. So we were able to block it up really good, and they were playing such sort of loose coverage at times that we can just play pitch and catch out there. So if I'm the coordinator, which one do I do? Do I stop the run? Because if I do, then they're going to pass the ball on us for 100 yards. Do I stop the pass? Because when I do, they're going to run the ball on us for 100 yards or 200 yards or 250 yards. And that's exactly what they happened. Now, there were times where it seemed like they, were playing man-to-man outside, and they still were able to run the football. It comes a point to that it's man on man. And either I'm going to beat you or you're going to beat me. And too many times yesterday, the Commanders' offense, their blockers beat the Tennessee Titans tacklers. They were mauling them. I'm sure when Jeff and Tavondre and those other guys watch their film in that defensive front, they're going to be embarrassed, like truly embarrassed. Because again, when Jeffrey Simmons comes out a few weeks ago and said nobody runs on the Titans, I appreciate that. No one should run on y'all. That's basically, when somebody's running a football, it's basically I'm challenging your manhood. Like, but knuckle up, let's go. Let's see how tough you are. And when I'm running on you, that means, you ain't got it today. And that's why Jeffrey Simmons weeks ago said nobody runs on us, because he understands that's a mentality thing. Like, either we going to stop you or y'all going to get some yardage. And more than likely, we going to stop you, because that's our mentality. Y'all can throw the football all y'all want, but when y'all talk about running the football, y'all not running it on us. So I understood what he said. But when you say that, you got to back it up each and every week. You can't say 1 week or 2 weeks we do it, and then on the third week we don't do it. When you come out with a statement like that, every other team is watching you. Every other team is listening to you. Oh, they say we can't run on them? Oh, okay. Let's try it this week. Some are successful, some aren't. But even when they run on you, they shouldn't run to the tune of 250-some yards or 60-some yards. That's basically taking your man. Come here, boy. Let me bend you over and spank you. That's just what they did. And it's embarrassing. And Jeff should be embarrassed. He should be. And everybody else on that defensive front should be embarrassed as well.
615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your calls and texts on the Tennessee Titans. They lose 42-19 to the Washington Commanders yesterday. The Titans record falling to 3-9 on the season. Still waiting for that elusive winning streak. It's been more than 2 calendar years since we've seen one. And it's going to be a little bit longer, possibly, until we see it, since they do have to start from scratch. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we haven't even talked about Will Levis today, which might be a record and after a game. Not really one mention of Will Levis in the first hour of the program. We will talk about Will Levis, and Derek's got a question for all of us that Willie and I found to be quite interesting. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025-1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you. Before we get to our next topic, Joel has been waiting patiently on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joel, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Yes. For first, I have a comment about Will Levis. There was a couple times I thought he was going to take a sack, and he stumbled out and either made I think one time he didn't get back to the line of scrimmage. The next time he made a good play, I think got a first down. But the question I have is, I believe in the last 5 years, he's had 4 or 5 different OCs. So I was wanting to ask D-Mace, since he played so many years in the pros, how hard is that for a player to go through that many OCs that quick? And could that be why now he seems to be getting more comfortable, because he finally got several games in this system under his belt. And I'll hang up and listen to his answer.
Thank you, Joel.
Well, we are what? 8 games into this system, 9, 10 games, whatever it is. I don't know.
12.
Oh man, goodness. Will should know by now. Listen, some guys, I can only tell you from my experience, I never had a problem with a playbook whatsoever. Just never. I don't know why, because it's not like I was an A student in school either. Now I wasn't an F student either. But
C's
or
get
D
deg-
student.
C's get degrees.
C's and B's.
Derek.
C's and B's. More C's than B's. But for some reason, I never had a problem with getting a playbook, learning that playbook, and the next following year having to learn another playbook. I had to learn 3 playbooks in 3 years, from college to the pros. And I never had a problem with, looking at the playbook, digesting it, and then being able to go out there on the field. Now, you have your ups and downs, like at the beginning of the year, mini camp, training camp, stuff like that. But by the season, you usually have what you're going to have. You know what plays you can run. You know what plays you can't run. Now, for a quarterback, it may be a little bit different because, listen, I only had to know, what we were doing as receivers, had to know which defense they were playing. The quarterback has to know everything. Like everything, tight ends, running backs, offensive line, they got to know all of that stuff. So it can be a little bit more difficult for you, but this is a position you chose to play and you know what comes with that position. And I don't think I've ever saw in my years of playing, I don't think there's ever been a quarterback that had a problem with learning the offense, whether it was 2 offenses in 3 years or 3 offenses in 4 years. They didn't have a problem with learning offense. That's not the excuse I'm going to give Will Levis. I think Will Levis is a bright enough person that the offense that he had in college and now that he has in the NFL, he's able to learn. Because there's always some type of thread that ties all these offenses together. They're all the same plays, but they may just be called different formations, but they're all the same plays. So I'm not going to give Will Levis that pass. I'm not going to do that, because he understands what comes with the position. Now, do you get more comfortable in offense when you play in it longer? Absolutely. That comes with the territory. You would love to just stay in with one offensive coordinator or one offensive philosophy your whole career, but that's not going to happen. If you change teams, typically you're going to change philosophies. If your coach get fired, typically you're going to change offensive coordinators. So I'm not going to give Will Levis that pass. I think he's doing the best under the circumstances that he's in. He's never made the excuse that, I've had 4 offensive coordinators in so many years. At least I haven't heard that.
I haven't heard it.
Yeah. So if he hasn't said it, I'm not going to give that excuse for him.
So let's talk about Will Levis yesterday. 18 of 37 for 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Only 2 sacks taken compared to the 20, I believe, he took in the previous 3 games combined. Just 2 sacks taken yesterday with a quarterback rating of 84.5. So to update our ledger, since Will Levis returned to action against the LA Chargers a few weeks ago, 4 games, 4 starts, 71 completions on 115 attempts. That's a completion percentage of roughly 62%. 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 101.4. Now, if you were to extrapolate that performance over 17 games, wait till you hear these numbers, everybody. If you were to extrapolate those over 17 games, that would equal 4,080 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Now, I don't know if we think that Will Levis is a 30 touchdown to 8 interception quarterback, but that does reflect well on him. But Derek, we've spent so much time each of these past few weeks talking about the incremental progress that Will Levis has made. But as we were preparing for the show, you asked a question to Willie and I that we thought was quite interesting, and I would love if you shared it with all of our listeners.
Yeah, do we suffer from and this is the question I ask you guys, do we suffer from sports low self-esteem or quarterback low self-esteem? Fan low self-esteem, I mean. And what I mean by that is that typically when someone has low self-esteem, anything that was better than the last thing is good. Like anything is like, just give me whatever. I take it. And if one thing goes right, it's like, it's the world. It means the world. Why? Because your self-esteem is so low that anything that comes your way that seems good, you sort of gravitate to it and you lock on to it because you haven't experienced good things in the past. So this small little thing, it's good to you. It may not be good to the masses, but because you have low self-esteem, you're taking and you run with it and you hold on to it. I'm trying to figure out if the fan base is just that, a fan base with low self-esteem about their team. Well, like anything that comes their way, like last week they played great. There were a lot of people jumping on it like, yes,
we can make the playoffs.
We beat the Houston Texans. We beat Miss Amy's team. She hates them. We beat them. They have a little success. Now it's just like, because we haven't had no success, it's like we grab onto it, we hold on to it like it's the last thing. When in actuality, there's better things out there. There's better things to come if you just be patient and what you expect, you hoping you get out your team, but just be patient. It will come, but you don't want to be patient. It's like any little thing is a great thing. When in actuality, if you look at the big picture, it's really not. It's not called winning football.
Well, let's take those numbers that Adam just threw out there, because I think there's nothing wrong with being positive and hopeful that your team is moving in the right direction. But I think you also have to take the time to look at numbers like that and say, let's take it a little further, right? The numbers on the surface can tell you one thing, but it really doesn't tell you the whole story. Read those numbers again for the last 4 weeks.
All right. For the last 4 weeks, he is 71 of 115, which is roughly 62% completion percentage, 960 yards, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a rating of 101.4.
Okay. 3 of those 4 games, right? They're way behind by the time he puts up most of those numbers. He had a couple of nice drives late in the Chargers game during, let's be honest, garbage time. Game was over. It made the numbers look better. Yesterday, what was the score when he threw his first touchdown pass? 28-0. Nice throw. Great effort a play or two before that, getting away from the rush and throwing it down the field. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but let's put it in context. It's garbage time. So the number that I keep coming back to for him, and this is not to say I'm ready to move on from Will Levis or anything, because I think I stay consistent with my argument that because he's super cheap, unless you have a better option that falls into your lap, you love a guy in the draft or a guy drops in your lap in free agency that's way better, he better be worth the price, because I think Will Levis is inching up, gets a little bit better each week, but let's not act like these numbers, when you said it equates to 30 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions, that's in fantasy football, those numbers are the same. But in the context of the game, those numbers really don't get you anywhere, right? Now, the game against Houston, he did make some big plays when the game was close. That was a good performance, even though he got away with the pick 6. But here's the number, QBR. That takes into context when you do it. It takes into context the sacks you give up, which is not accounted for in those numbers. It takes into account how effective are you running the ball, which he is not effective. So the QBR, there are 35 quarterbacks that qualify, that have played enough to qualify for these stats in the NFL. He's 34th in QBR, 32.9. That number has to come up. I think yesterday in the single game, it was in the 40s somewhere. So that is a better definition of how he played yesterday.
Do you still have those QBR numbers up? Can you give me who's smack dab in the middle? I'd love to know what the quote unquote average.
I would say the average is in the 50s. Drake May is 57.9. Jared Goff actually is underrated in QBR. I'm not sure why. 57.6, even though his passer rating is 109, which is off the charts good. He's been talked about as an MVP. Russell Wilson, 56.8. And just like any stat, there are flaws in that stat too. Bo Nix is up to 56.7. Those are the middle guys. Those are that's numbers 15 through 18 I just gave you. Number 1 in the league is Kyler Murray at 75.1. Joe Burrow, 73.9. Lamar Jackson, 73.3. Will Levis is 32.9.
Listen,
the sacks brings you way down.
And the reason why I say that, and because we can sometimes fool ourselves into thinking something's good when in actuality it's not. Now, it may not be bad, horrible, but it's not sort of a recipe for something good moving forward. In this example, obviously the quarterback, Will Levis. And listen, I'm not putting this loss on Will Levis. I'm not. That's not what I'm doing. But because this fan base has been starving for a franchise quarterback, and they've seen, Will Levis, they saw what happened, when he first popped on the scene. They saw the 4 touchdowns. All of a sudden, it was the second coming of Joe Montana. And then everything sort of came down to earth, which y'all should have saw coming. But then after that, they haven't seen consistent play. So right now, it's like, man, anything he gives, as long as he doesn't throw an interception, as long as he doesn't do a bonehead thing, then anything beside that is he's getting better. When in actuality, it's not. Is it enough to transform this team, no matter who they put around, to transform this team from a bottom feeder to one of the top teams in the National Football League? I'm not sure. That's why my thing
I
is
think
let
the
him
answer
play.
is no,
Yeah,
not yet.
exactly.
He's gone from being the reason they lose to not being the reason they lose, but he's
being the reason that they
not
win.
not being a guy
Reason
that's
they win.
elevating
Exactly.
anybody, but also he's got another few steps before he gets to league average. Let's take the passer rating again, which again doesn't take into account when you throw the touchdown passes. Like I have Joe Burrow as my fantasy quarterback. He's putting up huge touchdown pass numbers, but a lot of the games they're in shootouts, they're behind, and he is racking up yards and touchdown passes late in games. He got one yesterday. They were down 2 scores. They're throwing he hit one to Jamar Chase for like 50 yards, and he throws another one. I got some great garbage points, and they count just the same in my fantasy league as if he did it at the beginning of the game. But that's not the same as leading your team to victory. So just the passer rating, which does not take into account when you do things, it just is what you do when you throw the ball. He's still below average. The league average is 92 on passer rating. And Will Levis right now is 85.4. So
that's
it's come
even
up.
after having a good passer rating performance over the past 4 weeks.
Right,
like
right.
Even
it's
after that,
up to 85.4. But we still got a ways to go
Yes.
before you become average. And that does not take into account one of his biggest problems, and that is he holds on to the ball. He gets sacked a lot.
But what I'm hearing is
that doesn't affect that number at all, and he's still below average.
But the only thing I hear is, and I've heard it enough on our station, especially the 2 shows before today, 2 shows, or last week, a week before that. Well, he didn't throw any interceptions. He didn't do this. He didn't make these bonehead plays.
Sacked twice.
He only got sacked this many times.
So, okay, and that's okay. That's a baby step forward, but let's not make it more than it is.
But what I'm saying, and you're right, let's not make it. Yes, he didn't do anything to cause them to lose. We understand that because we've seen some things that have caused the Titans to lose that were on his lap. We understand that. But we can't get in this space where when he doesn't, make a bonehead play or throw an interception, and he just has a pedestrian game where all of a sudden that's great. As long as Will Levis don't do anything to mess it up, that's great. No, that's not how this league operates. That's not how it runs. Your quarterback has to be the guy that elevates people. So after a Titans loss, don't come here and sit here and say, well, Will Levis didn't throw 2 interceptions. Will Levis didn't throw. He's paid not to throw interceptions. So again, a guy that had played the sport, when you don't throw an interception, I'm not going to sit here and clap, shake your hand and do all that. That's what you're supposed to do, not throw interceptions. Or when you throw a 30-yard bomb to a guy that's running wide open, that's not a great throw. It's a throw that we pay you to make. But because we're so thirsty for that quarterback sort of, that guy that at least 10 or 15 teams have, we're so thirsty for that. Anything that Will does or doesn't do is like, whew, at least he didn't do what he did 5 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago. And I understand that, and I'm glad he's not doing those things. But my thing is, let the whole season play out. Bring in competition next year that's going to help him elevate and help him do better. And then let's go from there. But just because he doesn't throw an interception doesn't mean like, whoo, everything is fine and dandy with Will. Let's keep moving. And again, I'm not blaming this loss on Will Levis. Don't get me wrong, because I don't think he necessarily did anything wrong. But when there's pedestrian play, don't mistake that for great play.
Okay, so let's take another layer here to try to evaluate his performance yesterday, because I agree with what you're saying here. But that's 28-7. They get a stop, they get the ball, they move down in towards the red zone. I don't think they got into the red zone per se. But you're thinking, okay, you could suddenly be within 2 touchdowns if you can punch it in here. And I'm just going to throw 2 plays at you, because I think we can look at several plays yesterday where you say to yourself, should that ball have been caught? Could that throw have been better? And the answer is mixed, right? Throw could have been better, still probably catchable. And here are the 2 plays. It's 2nd and 7 from the Washington 23. Pass incomplete, short right to Tony Pollard. I think that was a dead drop.
Yeah, it was a drop.
And it's 3 or 4 yards, but then now it brings you up 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 instead of 3rd and 7. Then he tries to go deep down the left side for Chig. And I have honestly never seen Chig in all the time he's been here catch a ball like that one. Difficult catch in traffic. He is a busy runner. Arms, legs flying everywhere. He's fast when he gets going, like he showed last week. But he is not a guy that makes great catches in traffic, high points. He's a little uncoordinated. So I don't like him on that route, honestly. But it's a pretty good throw. It's a pretty good throw. It's catchable. He doesn't catch it. So these are the kind of things that could, if it's 28-14 instead of 28-10, maybe the game go. These are the things I'm looking for. What the breakthrough? Can Will Levis rise up and bring his team back from an awful thing? Those are the things I'm looking for the next step in growth.
615-737-1025. So here's the question from Derek to all of you. Are we so thirsty for a good quarterback in this town that Will Levis not being as bad as he was at the beginning of the season, is that good enough for us? Are we so, what's the word I'm looking for here? Are we so
quarterback deprived?
Yes. Are we so quarterback
Have we
deprived?
lowered the bar?
Exactly.
Have we lowered the bar so much that Will Levis playing competent football has us excited? 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vineyard, 1025, 1063. The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you talking Will Levis, and maybe our bar is set so low. When you were talking about being thirsty for a quarterback, I was thinking, I never experienced this because I wasn't cool enough to go to bars when I was younger. But, you go to a bar, you're single, you're scoping the room, you catch someone's eye, you're hoping to, say hello and maybe make something happen. It doesn't happen. And the bar is getting ready to close. And there's someone there who you normally might not go after, but you're there. You're desperate. You've been there for hours. And you're like, normally I'd say no, but all things considered, I might just have to say yes. And that's what I was thinking when Derek was describing this. So are we that quarterback deprived in this town that Will Levis looks better by comparison? And Will, you brought up some stats.
Well, remember, this is you can make the correlation to your analogy,
which never happened to me. Not because,
but remember
I was,
that
with
Will
the
Levis is extremely inexpensive. He is inexpensive next year and the year after. So anything that when you are evaluating him, you're evaluating him versus the alternatives that will present themselves this offseason. And then maybe if he happens to be there after next year, right? He is super, super cheap. So you're asking yourself, will he get better? And will he give me the opportunity to build the roster into the rest of because the rest of the roster is not good. The rest of the roster is not good. They need more players. So could he get to a point where he gets good enough that if you have a good roster, you can win some games? That's the next question for him. And this is the context to me, because where he is right now, it's not worth celebrating right now. Is he getting a little bit better? Yeah. Could he keep getting better? It's a boring answer, but that's what they have to find out.
I just think the fan base is at this point, they're just like Adam said. It's like, well, low self-esteem, or it's like, well, I couldn't find nobody else, so all right, lights are on. All right, let's go. And it's like, well,
sometimes you don't like when the lights come on.
You don't like when the lights
keep
come
the
on,
lights off.
You could be that person that person's talking to him. It's like, lights on, I don't want you. They're saying that
yeah,
about
you're at the
you.
bar, you see
exactly.
the lights flash, turn on. I was like, oh, never mind.
Never mind, I'm going. I'm leaving. See you. But I think that's where, and I'm not faulting the fan base for it. I think that's where the fan base is that anything that Will Levis does, if it's contrary to what he did the first 5-6 games of the season, then the fan base is like, okay, at least he's not doing those things. But is he elevating your team? Is he putting the team on his back? Do you see him? Can you visualize him being your quarterback when y'all move into that new stadium in 2027? Do you visualize that? If you cannot see that, then there's no reason to sit here and hold on to every little good thing that he does, because Will Levis will do some good things. He will.
Right.
He's not a horrible quarterback, but you got to ask yourself, is being not horrible, is that good enough?
And that's a good point too, about he will flash. And remember early in the season, that's another thing. He wasn't flashing the big level throw, the exciting play where you're like, wow, now that's why people thought he could be pretty good. It's like a guy who's got great power that strikes out a lot, but every now and then he's going to hit a 450-foot home run. You're like, wow, if he could cut down on the strikeouts, if he could put the ball in play more, look at that raw power. But sometimes they get there and sometimes they don't. And Will Levis can make some big time throws. And that was that one at the end of the half where he spins out of traffic, runs, throws it off balance, and then comes back with a nice dime. You're like, okay, that's talent. He does have talent. It's the small gains week in and week out that he's got to keep getting there and weed out more of the mistakes and get more plays like that.
To your point, Willie, when we're talking about, the analytics underneath Will Levis's performance, one analytic that people in football point to is EPA, expected points added. Will Levis's top 4 performances and expected points added have been over the past 4 weeks in order: the game against the Chargers, then the Vikings, then the Commanders, then the Texans. But even his second best performance in expected points added against the Vikings, he added 1.2. Now compare that to his performance in week 1 against the Bears, where he was minus 22. So even if these have been his best performances of the season, they're only modest, but they look so much better when you compare them to how bad he was at the start of the season. And I believe Jared made this point last week. Are we spending too much time comparing Will Levis since returning from injury to what he was before the injury? And is that clouding our judgment that even over these past 4 weeks, his numbers, the traditional numbers, have looked good? Willie, as you laid out, the underlying numbers are still suspect, but just run-of-the-mill quarterback play over the past month from Will Levis is better than what we saw at the beginning of the season. And that may be giving us, a skewed look at where Will Levis really is.
This is the point I made last week, and it's still the same this week. If you look at it, he's now made 9 starts in each year, last year and this year. His numbers are virtually the same last year and this year. Quarterback rating last year, 84.2. Quarterback rating this year, 85.4. Almost identical. Quarterback rating last year, 33.2. This year, 32.9. Almost exactly identical. So that's the answer to the question. It's just, there was a dip. It's come back. Last year, there were some high highs and some pretty low lows. He's got to continue to get better. And, of course, the roster around him needs to get better. That will help him get better. I think at this point, do we think he's going to turn into a star quarterback? I doubt it. But could he be a solid middle-of-the-road guy? I think that's a realistic goal. And while he's cheap, there may not be anything wrong with that if there's nothing better out there that's obvious. I keep hearing the same thing. The quarterback class this year in the draft is so-so at best. I think that remains to be seen. There's all the evaluation that will be done after in the coming months that hasn't been done yet. People change their stock and takes at that point. Maybe we'll feel differently when the draft comes around. But as we sit here right now, we just talked about a guy like Sam Darnold, who would be an expensive guy to go get. He's a middling quarterback who's done well to get to where he is. These are the questions I have in terms of how to handle him.
Justin from Greenbrier on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com says Will Levis is the beer goggles quarterback.
Yeah.
That might be it.
Coming back around to your reference.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another texter says, and we have a lot of texts on this, Brian Callahan will address reporters coming up in the next 10 or so minutes. So we will get back to this conversation. So it won't end with this segment. Another texter says, I think Derek's point is spot on. The narrative is definitely being pushed by some fans that Will Levis is improving every single week. Some fans struggle to view his performance objectively, and they convince themselves that he's improving because he finally chose to slide, throw the ball away, or just take a sack. People seem to forget that these are all just basic tenets of playing the quarterback position at any level. Let him play the season out and bring in someone next year via draft or free agency that plans on coming in to take the job from him. May the best man win.
And you have a point. It's when you haven't had, again, when is the last time the Tennessee Titans have drafted a quarterback, groomed that quarterback, and that quarterback has turned out to lead you to a Super Bowl, won an MVP, or just played great football? When is the last time that happened? You don't even have to. Don't even answer that.
We
question.
all know the answer.
We all know the answers.
It's a rhetorical question.
It's a rhetorical question. Don't even have. You don't even have to answer it. So, with that being said, anything like the hope was you draft Will Levis, and because at that year it was, they were beating the drum. Will Levis is a first-round draft pick, not the Titans, but the analysts out there, Mel Kiper, he's the best quarterback in this year's draft. He should go number one. I'm hearing people saying he can possibly go number one, when in fact that was far from the truth. He ended up getting drafted in the second round. That's still, it's still high. When you get drafted, I didn't get drafted in the second round, so I'm not going to poo-poo it. He still got drafted high. He still was, the third or fourth quarterback taken in that draft. But when you take him and you see the play where it's so good at one point and then it's so bad at another, and then all of a sudden it gets consistently bad, and then all of a sudden you start to get some good play or competent play, It's play that a quarterback should. It's the way a quarterback should play. So when you get just that type of play, it's yes, he's improving. Yes, he's doing this. Yes, he's doing that. When in actuality, he's just not doing the egregious things that he did before. What he's doing now is just playing competent quarterback. That's what he's doing. And competent quarterback is not going to win you many games, people. Again, I'm not saying that Will Levis can't get better moving forward, but my thing is, let's not mistake competent football for great football. Let's not mistake competent football for, oh my goodness, he's the quarterback of the future. Let the season play out, however it's going to play out. Even if he go on a run with throwing 250, which he may just be that. He may just average 245 yards moving forward. But that doesn't mean that now all of a sudden he's the franchise quarterback. Play it out. Go in the next season with some competition. When you go in with competition, now I can really see whether you're the guy or not.
Dustin from Hopkinsville on our text line says, what more could he do? Not the team. He can't catch the dang ball. He can't stop the opposing offense. Tell us. And then he references the stats, Willie, that I mentioned before. In his last 4 games, if it were 17 games, it would be 30 touchdowns and 8 interceptions with folks dropping balls a lot. You wouldn't take that for a year?
Again, see, and this is where I'm not going to argue with you. Think what you want to think. You are in that circle or that group of people that I believe we haven't had a franchise quarterback. We haven't had a quarterback that we drafted that we can celebrate in over a decade. So now any play that we get, we're going to celebrate that. And I understand it. But you know where that's going to keep you? A mediocre to bad organization. That's where it's going to keep you. And I guarantee you, if that play consists and continues in this next season, y'all are going to be hired. Y'all are going to be screaming, fire the coach, fire the GM, and get rid of the quarterback. I'm just telling you what's happening now. And if it doesn't get better, then that's where y'all are going to be as a fan base. It's good that Will isn't making the same mistakes that he made before. Great job. Clap it up for him. But he's still not elevating this program. He's still not elevating this franchise. He's just a quarterback right now. That's what he is. He's not a bad quarterback. He's not a good quarterback. He's just a quarterback. They need something more than just a quarterback. Look at every team, the team you played yesterday. He's not just a quarterback. That guy is a damn good quarterback. He's potential. It looks like he's on his way to potentially, one of these years winning an MVP. Why can I say that? Because I saw the same thing in number 8 when they say he couldn't throw the football past 10 yards. And look at him, 2-time MVP. I see the same thing in Daniels. Okay, so when you have quarterback play as you have it now with Will Levis, all right, if that's the way you want to think, then all right. But I guarantee you this. You will not get no further than potentially winning your own division. That is it. That is as far as you're going to go.
615-737-1025. We have a lot of text on this subject, so we will get back to it. Brian Callahan will address reporters momentarily at St. Thomas Sports Park. We will take you there live. By the way, if anybody's looking for a free merch idea, Will Levis beer goggles. I like that idea. You put them on, Will Levis turns into Joe Burrow. So if anybody's looking for a free merch
or it could be
idea,
like Shallow Hal.
That's the first time I've heard that movie referenced
in a good line.
20 years? Has it been 20 years since Shallow Hal came out?
It's a good movie too.
Maybe we're all Shallow Hal when it comes to Will Levis. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5-106.3 The Game. D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We await Brian Callahan as he addresses reporters at St. Thomas Sports Park. But while we wait, we received a text message during the break from our very own Jared Stillman. I'm just going to read the text, and then I'll let you guys respond because you were sort of responding through me.
Yeah.
Quote, Will Levis had a higher grade than Jaden Daniels, I assume, on PFF. Will Levis, 69.3, Jaden Daniels, 68.
This is PFF?
I assume. Will Levis had 4 big-time throws. Daniels had 0. Levis has 4 drops. Daniels had 1. Daniels was sacked on 20% of his pressures. Levis, 12.5. To which, Derek, you said, would you take Will Levis over Jaden Daniels as your quarterback?
That is my question. He threw out all of those statistics
and by the
stuff
way,
like that.
By the way, Derek, Jared never answered your question.
And he never answered my question. When it boils down to it, see, this is how you cut through the fat. It's like, let's just cut to the chase, brother.
I'd also like to know when Will Levis, like how many of those big time throws came when the Titans were down 21-0.
But again, let's cut to the chase, Jared. Who would you take? Jaden Daniels or Will Levis? I don't want to hear that other stuff. Cut to the chase. Which one would you take? Okay. That's what I'm asking. That's why I said, listen, let the season play out with Will Levis. I am not going to get excited because he completes a routine pass. I'm not going to get excited when he completes a pass to a wide open guy running down the right sideline. I am not going to get excited about that. And y'all shouldn't get excited about it either. Why? You enjoy it. You like that he figured it out. You like that he found an open guy. But people, I think we've got it's just like we are at the bottom of the barrel right now. When routine plays become, oh my goodness, this guy, he's the next thing, or he's playing so much better. Dude, those were the routine plays that he was missing earlier, that we were like, dude, you got to at least complete those passes. Those are the easy ones. Those are the layups. Now that you're completing them, now all of a sudden it's, oh my goodness, there's Will Levis. I'll take him over Jaden Daniels. They're routine. That's like saying, if I run a slant, it's a routine catch, and nobody's on me. The defensive back is not draped all over me, and he's playing 8 yards off. And I run a routine slant or a hitch or a curl. Those are routine catches. There's nothing great about that at all. The guy wasn't on my back. He was 8 yards off. I'm supposed to catch that. Now, when you throw a 20-yard pass and I got double team on me and I go up and get it, now that's a hell of a catch. That's a catch. That's the extra stuff that we pay you for. That's the extra. We ain't paying you for the routine stuff. We're paying you for the great plays that you make. And Will Levis hasn't made enough of those great plays. And I'm not on him because of that. All I am saying is this. When we start celebrating just okay quarterback play or routine quarterback play, I think we are in a bad place.
Okay, let's did Jared not make a reference to if you swapped those two, like if you put Levis on the Washington team and you flipped
what he said
Jaden Daniels to the Titans, what would it look like?
Jared said, how would Steve McNair have looked at Penn State, and how would Kerry Collins have looked at Alcorn State?
Right. So hold on.
Steve McNair was a better quarterback than Kerry Collins in my mind. So Steve, I'm gonna tell you, here's my answer,
completely
Jared.
Different types
Steve
of
would have excelled at Penn State just as he excelled at Alcorn State. And Kerry Collins would have probably excelled at Alcorn State. I'm not sure he would have. And this is the reason why, because he couldn't improvise like Steve could.
Right. Which was necessary for Steve McNair to do it at Alcorn State. But let's go back to Daniels and Levis, okay? I don't know if PFF grades the second half different than the first half. To me, the game is told in the first half. Jaden Daniels was 14 for 15 in the first half, and he had 6 carries for 30 yards. He was lights out. Second half, the numbers weren't as good. Who cares? The game's over. The game's over at halftime. Would Will Levis have gone 14 for 15 with 6 carries for 30 yards? Let's not even take into account you have to scheme differently for Jaden Daniels because of what he does. He opens things up because of his threat to run, right? So the flip-flop thing, I'm not buying that. And let's also look at Jaden Daniels for the season. He's 2 years younger than Will Levis.
And he, too, has went through 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years.
He
transferred from Arizona State to LSU, and then he got drafted. So he went to 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years, and look at him. He's still playing great football, ain't he?
And do you think he has a great supporting cast on the offense for Washington? I don't think so.
It's good. It's not great.
Arguably better than the Titans. Yes. Not way better. There's not star-studded guys around him. That's why they picked so high last year. He has a 71.7 QBR, 5th in the league. That is elite. And his passer rating, which does not take into account his ability to run and extend plays, which he is unbelievable at. That might be his best attribute. His passer rating is 99.4. He's got a really good wide receiver in Terry McLaurin, and he's got some other guys that probably aren't playing on your fantasy team week in and week out. And he is making it happen. There's really no comparison. If Jared's point is the Titans don't have a lot around Will Levis and his team didn't help him much yesterday, I can buy that to an extent. But Jaden Daniels is tipping the scales.
So one thing
he's elevating everybody.
One thing that Jared has done is, so the Commanders released Emmanuel Forbes the other day, another recent first-round pick of theirs. So Chase Young, a first-round pick, gone. Jamin Davis, gone. Jahan Dotson, gone. Emmanuel Forbes, gone. Now, Jared has said that, hey, the Commanders missed out on all these first-round picks too. How come they can be good, but the Titans can't? And we always look at the Titans' bad drafting record. Well, what's the one thing that
quarterback
the Commanders drafted that the Titans
They're
didn't?
8-5 for one reason.
Quarterback.
A quarterback. A quarterback.
Yeah.
So when you say that,
they hit a home run. He looks like the real deal.
Each team in the last 2 seasons, if they've drafted well, no matter if they drafted around, but if they draft a bad team, let me say that. When a bad team draft number 1 for the last 2 years, with the exception of Carolina Panthers, because they're just bad all around. And they ain't got too many good players. Hell, the ownership is not good. But when you draft that guy at the quarterback position, it can change your franchise. Houston did it, and the Washington Commanders did it. Not because they went out and got all of these guys, because, hell, I mean, they had talent. Maybe they didn't reach the ceiling that they needed to reach that talent. They had some talent. But what put these teams over the edge or over the cliff, or what caused these teams to go from bottom of the barrel to, either middle of the pack or top of the pack, is the quarterback. You get the quarterback right, it cures a lot of ailments that you have. But when you don't get the quarterback right, those ailments get magnified. That is what's happening to the Titans. And his fan base, listen, I think y'all misunderstanding me. I think y'all believe I'm getting down on, I'm getting back on Will Levis, because I'm not. I've always said, let Will Levis finish the season out, because I don't want to get fooled like I did last year. Let him play the season out, and then we will discuss it. But I'm not going to sit here and be this yo-yo like all of y'all are being at times, or some of y'all are being at times. He play a good game. Oh, my goodness, Will is the guy. He plays some bad games. Get him out of here. He don't deserve to be the quarterback. No, let him play the season out and then see what happens. Because to me, he hasn't shown enough to be considered a franchise quarterback. That is all I am saying. But if some of the people want to get on the bandwagon of him playing better, I'm cool with that. But ask yourself at the end of the season, not now, at the end of the season, is he a franchise quarterback? Have you, because I said at the beginning of the season, at the end of the season, there need to be no question marks. When you have a question mark, we need to draft another quarterback, because we had a question mark last year and they didn't draft one. If you have another question mark, you better be drafting a quarterback just in case, or bringing in a more than competent backup to take over if he doesn't get the job done. That is all I'm saying.
Dylan on our text line says, we're excited about progression in all caps. Y'all are sitting here burning Levis when you need to be focused on the makeup of the whole team.
Right. I do think that the pathway to being a good team is to build the rest of the roster, which is still a big time work in progress.
But if you want to expedite it, what has to be the cure?
Well,
a quarterback.
But I just don't see them getting that. They're not going to, unless they feel that guy is in the draft. And that's always the tricky thing, because there are teams that picked high and missed on the quarterback they thought was the game changer, right? That will be where the talent evaluation is going to be big in the offseason. But the other path is to strengthen the roster with other guys in the draft.
Listen, the Tennessee Titans know this just as well as anybody else, and the fan base should know this. Until you have a bona fide franchise quarterback, you're always going to be in this position, that unknowing position, that position that's
But
like,
you could spend 20 years looking for that guy. Like the Bears have. I'm hoping, if I'm a Bears fan, that Caleb Williams is the guy, but we don't know.
All right, before you hold that thought, Brian Callahan is finally up at the podium addressing reporters. We'll take you there now.
The two that are of note from the game, and then we'll just, again, see how Wednesday comes along. But feel the exact same as I felt last night. That was a surprising result. That was a game that I felt confident we were going to play well in. I thought the week of practice pointed to that being the case, and then really a sort of a compounding of errors early in the game led to a lead that was, hard to overcome to get to that point. Played better in the second half once we settled down, but too much to overcome in the early part of the game. There's some positives to point out, but at the end of the day, we didn't do well enough, particularly early, to give ourselves a chance to win.
Were you surprised at all? It sounded like at least Jeffrey seemed to suggest that maybe there's I think what he termed like a little bit of a hangover factor of success. Were you surprised to hear that? And what's kind of your reaction?
Yeah, I didn't sense that. Look, those guys are entitled to say what they think and feel after a game. And sometimes they say things that, I didn't necessarily see it the same. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, you have a performance like that and you're sort of grasping for an explanation on why. And there really wasn't one, other than we made too many errors early in the game and put ourselves in a hole. And that's ultimately, at the end of the day, what it was. You watch our first punt and our punt cover, you watch those guys cover and the energy and the effort, and the excitement, and the defense is coming onto the field. There wasn't anything early in the game that made me feel like we were at all in that place. And, we give up a long run for a touchdown. And then we don't do much on offense the second series. We get a first down or two and put ourselves in a spot to convert a 3rd and 4. The ball gets batted. Those things happen. And then they go down and they score another touchdown. It's 14-0 pretty quick. And before we even really have a chance to do anything with it, we fumble the ball on offense again, and they go down and score. And then we fumbled in ensuing kickoff return, and they go down and score. And all of a sudden it's 28-0. And there really wasn't a lot of football to be played at that point. But the football that we did play wasn't obviously good enough at any point. And so when you ask a guy after a game how they feel about things like that, I think they don't have the perspective. They haven't watched the tape. And, they are also searching for an answer that doesn't feel like it was a surprise to them as well, that it got out of hand so fast. And so, yeah, I didn't sense that at any point during the week. I didn't think that was something that we were going to have to deal with. And, my message all week to those guys is that you deal with two things in the NFL all the time. And you deal with either prosperity or adversity. Those are the two things that you deal with. And things are either going poorly or they're going well. And both are equally difficult to deal with in their own right. And those are things that you have to work through. And, and then the message on Saturday before the game was you got to prove it. Prove that last week is who we are. And we didn't do a good enough job of that. So I didn't have any sense at any point during the week that we had relaxed or thought we had arrived. That certainly wasn't anything from my side that I felt. And I just think the mistakes led to an early lead that was insurmountable for us at that point.
On the special team side of things, you made the change. Do you approach how you handle special teams differently this week, knowing the accumulation of things that didn't go right?
Well, the special teams wise, the thing that didn't go right was a turnover. Over
the season,
okay.
Things have just.
Yeah, we got to find a way not to turn the ball over. That's the biggest issue. And so, yeah, there's plenty of things that we've done on special teams that've got to be better. I thought we covered particularly well in the game. But yeah, again, no one really wants to hear about that. So, yeah, there's things that we got to keep working on and keep looking at. And disappointing that we put the ball on the ground.
Can you explain what it is about punt returning, kick returning that is such a specialized skill in your eyes? You've alluded a couple of times to not anybody can just go back there and do it. What
the catching punts is challenging. And then catching punts with a live coverage coming at you is a whole nother piece of the game. There's also a mentality that most returners have to have, because those guys those are big collisions. There's a bit of fearlessness, and it's just not for everybody. Just because a guy's good with the ball in his hand doesn't mean he can feel the punts, judge the punts, and then still be able to transition and get vertical at field full speed versus a full speed cover. It is a skill. It's a unique skill that I don't think just every player is capable of. I mean, you watch guys try to catch punts. It can look pretty ugly sometimes. And the catching of the punts first and foremost, you got to make sure you secure the football, and then the return part of it's the next part. So need to get more out of that phase than we've gotten. And again, you got to be able to hang on to the football on top of it.
Is there a plan to bring somebody in and test out free agents that position, or do you?
Yeah, that's all on the table. Yep.
Is there a
Is
reason
Mason an option? Mason Keithley?
Yep. Mason is an option. Obviously he's done it before. I've seen him doing training camp, but he's played in games. And so, yeah, he's certainly an option. And we'll look at all of them.
What went wrong when you went back and watched how successful they were running between the tackles yesterday, something that you guys had hung your hat on, and how much was the linebacker position, the triage going down and down the depth chart? How much is that impacting your ability to stop the run?
Yeah, I think there's the two things that are involved in that. One, I think the scheme with the quarterback run game is unique. They do a good job. We didn't do a good enough job. I don't think we fit a couple of runs well enough. And sometimes when you misfit a run, it pops for 5 or 6 and when you wrap it up. Well, we misfit a couple that pop for 15 and 20 and 30. And that's where the issue comes in. So we definitely misfit some runs. We weren't necessarily gapped where we were supposed to be gapped out. Part of that's the linebacker spot. I thought we could have been better setting the edge physicality wise. I thought that there was one or two that got out on the edge that we didn't do a good enough job. So it's an everybody issue. When you give the runs up the way we did, it's especially in a one back run game, it's the old one back, one gap, and everybody's got to be where they're supposed to be. And you have one guy out of position that can lead to an explosive run, and that's what makes run defense hard, is that everyone's got to be right, and we weren't right enough times.
What efforts, if any, were made in game to try to address the bleeding in the run defense?
Yeah, I mean, you talk to Denard probably more about the specifics of calls and stuff, but certainly try to find some things that, try to hit a couple calls that you can try to knock a run or two out, which we did a couple times. But really it was just the accumulation, one, of them having a big lead and being able to just keep handing the ball off, and two, of some misfits and not necessarily gapping the runs out the way they should have been. And again, you just over time of the game, it wore on, and we couldn't quite stop the bleeding in the run game over the course of 4 quarters. And, again, there was some good stuff that happened, but it's the ones that we missed that they made us pay for, unfortunately.
Jeff wasn't the only guy that had that kind of hangover and trouble dealing with success idea. That was somewhat widespread. Just the concept of dealing with success. One win, are you guys at such a point that like one win qualifies as such a level of success that guys have trouble dealing with coming out of it?
No, not at all. I mean, no. We, as I even said last week, is it's one win. We haven't arrived. We haven't done anything that would require us to have to worry about that. And all we're trying to do is stack good weeks together. And I thought we were on a good trajectory, a big win on the road, and to come out and play the game the way we did was just disappointing. To go down in that game early and not be able to come back. And there's no part about anything that I feel or our team should feel is that we guys should have an issue dealing with that. And again, that's after the game and in the heat of the moment. But yeah, we shouldn't have had any issue.
Although you don't feel that way, that is, what came out of the locker room yesterday. Like, you hear that, do you think that maybe there's something different you need to do this week to, make sure that that's something that's tucked away and not come around again?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all ultimately is my responsibility. And if that's the way that the team feels and something didn't go right, and whether I was aware of it or not, if that's the sentiment, that's a sentiment. And I can assure you that's been addressed.
Is there a level of...
That was Tennessee Titans head coach Brian Callahan addressing reporters We will continue the Titans conversation coming up next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingid, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, let's talk Loan Pronto. Imagine a completely hassle-free way to cash out your home's equity with no appraisals, no paperwork, no waiting. They can get you taken care of with a rapid equity loan. They use AI-driven tech to get you approved for cash out in as little as 1 day. So if you're looking to get on better financial ground in 2025, call Loan Pronto and see how much you can qualify for. This time next week, you could be credit card debt-free by taking money out of your home's equity and killing that credit card bill, knocking out that car payment once and for all by paying off the car loan. You save interest every month doing that. The average home owner saves over $1,000 a month through this program with Loan Pronto. So give them a call. Find out how much you can save. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D. Mays, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Fingan here with you. We heard a little bit from Tennessee Titans head coach Brian Callahan. Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, will join us in the next segment. He's at the news conference, and we'll get his thoughts on all of that, as well as the Titans' loss to the Commanders yesterday. I just want to touch on one thing quickly before we get to something else.
Yes.
I get this sense on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, that we are marching on Will Levis with torches and pitchforks right now. That we are blaming his performance yesterday for the Titans' outcome, or being unduly harsh, I should say, on Will Levis's performance yesterday. Although Will Levis really didn't have anything to do with the fact that the Titans got their doors blown off by the Commanders. I think, and gentlemen, if I'm not speaking correctly for all of us, please interject.
Mm-hmm.
I think our general point is that Will Levis was so bad to start the season that over the past 4 games, he's been solid. But I think there are people who are looking at his solid performances over the past 4 weeks and making them out to be more than they actually are because of what we saw before he was injured. He has been better over the past month than he was before he suffered the injury that kept him out for 3 games? So he's been better comparatively, but that was so bad that even competent quarterback play, league average quarterback play, whatever you want to call it, looks sparkling by comparison. And I think, Derek, your point specifically is that we can't get sucked into what's just average to slightly above average quarterback play just because Will Levis hasn't done all of the things that he did at the beginning of the season.
And this is what happens when you have a bad team as a whole. When you have a bad team, when the one person that contributed to the bad stuff at the beginning, he's not doing those things that he once did. So now you sort of move him out of the way. You're like, well, at least he's not what he used to be, and the team's so bad you can't blame the loss on him. And I get that part. I'm not blaming the loss on Will Levis. I'm not. But in this league, you go and you come as your quarterback does. You win and you lose as your quarterback performs, more than likely. If your quarterback performs at a high level, regardless of how your team looks, a lot of times you'll come out with the victory because you feel your team, your quarterback will raise you up or pick you up just enough to win a football game. And Will Levis hadn't got to that point. I'm going to give you some numbers just so y'all can think about this, because everybody want to act like now Will Levis is the bee's knees and everything else. Here's some numbers for you for Will Levis. This was in the first half, people. And the score ended up being 28-7 at halftime. And listen, that I'm not blaming that on Will, because you had 2 fumbles in there that contributed to at least 14 points. So 21 points. I'm not blaming this on Will Levis, but I'm just going to give you some numbers. -3 yards, 6 yards, no gain, 5 yards, 8 yards, 14, and a penalty, bring it back. 30 yards to Ridley, 9 yards, 27-yard touchdown to Nick Westbrook again. Y'all add all those numbers up. Add all those numbers up. That's just the first half. That's the first half. Is that winning football, regardless of what went on? Well, I understand the fumbles. I get that. That's not Will Levis's fault. I know that. But is that winning football to y'all? If y'all think that's winning football, then okay. All right. I won't say another damn word again. If y'all believe that's winning football. I'm not saying it's all Will Levis's fault. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that it's horrible football. I'm just saying the number speaks for themselves in the first half when it comes to Will. I know he had 3 drops, but even with his 3, if you add in his 3 drops, just add in the 3 catches, he's still under 60%, I believe, in completions for the game. He's still under 60%, people. So y'all want to blame the drops? Go ahead. I'll give you that. I won't blame the drops because each drop was maybe no more than 10 yards, 10, 15 yards. So let's just add another 10 yards to the whole game. All right. He's still under 60% completing his passes. Okay. But again, I'm not blaming it on Will Levis. I'm just telling you, he's not the problem, but he's not the solution either. He hasn't been the cure either, but he's not necessarily the problem, or at least yesterday he wasn't the problem. He played, and this is not what you want to hear, he played competent football. If y'all are good with competent football, then I won't say anything anymore. Hear me. If y'all are okay with competent football, I will not say anything about Will Levis anymore. If y'all tell me on the text line and y'all call in and say y'all are good with competent football and that's it, then okay, all right. You might as well have kept Mason Rudolph in the game. If that's the case, but if that's what y'all want to believe, and Jared, if that's what you want to believe too, competent football is okay, then take it and run with it.
We're assessing where he is in the big
exactly.
picture.
And I'm not blaming it on him.
This isn't about yesterday, really. This is about where we think he is. This is a 30,000-foot view where he has earned the right to continue to go out there, and he is making modest improvement. He has gone away from oh my gosh, I don't know if they can keep running this guy out there to, okay, he's bounced back. He's about back to where he was statistically at the end of last year. It's almost identical. The 9 starts this year, the 9 starts last year, the quarterback rating and the QBR are almost exactly the same. Keep going out there, keep getting better. Now, let's get to what's around him, because this is the problem. How does
this
team...
is part of the problem.
Well, this goes back to, again, they should have been more upfront that this is a rebuilding year and this could go any number of ways. The hope was that with all the money they spent in free agency to get a few more pieces in there to cover up for the fact that they have not drafted well, they have very few homegrown stars, basically zero, outside of Jeffrey Simmons. And Simmons hasn't had a great year. They're very short on homegrown talent. They brought in some veterans that were hoping to keep them, quote, competitive. What can take you to competitive from where they are now at 3-9? Special teams play? Absolutely. They have the worst special teams in the league by any metric. You go to any website, they are 32 out of 32. That brings you down to 3-9. Penalties. They're the second most penalized team in the NFL. That brings you down. They have, it's the false start penalties. It's the penalties that result in first downs for the other team. It's the penalties that negate an otherwise positive play. That's where on the margins you are bringing your talent level down. Turnover ratio. Do we need to even talk about that? I mean, that's an obvious one. They actually did have a takeaway yesterday, but they still -1, I think, at the end of the day. For the season, not anywhere near break even, right? That brings you down your talent level. And then finally, red zone efficiency. Did the defense get one stop yesterday to hold them to a field goal? Think about this. The 2 drives and then the offense. Okay, here's where they are for the season. Then we'll put it in the context of yesterday. The Titans defense has allowed touchdowns 66% of the time. The other team gets into the red zone. That's 29th in the NFL. If you get stops and you hold teams to field goals, that's a big swing. That swings games.
4 points.
That is taking a defense that yards-wise, can look pretty good and brings them down. And then the Titans offense on the other side, they're only scoring touchdowns 50% of the time when they reach the red zone. That's 25th. So you can win on the margins in these areas. You don't make mistakes. You limit turnovers. You're efficient in the red zone. You get key stops at key times. And you have great special teams.
Those are called hidden numbers.
Hidden numbers. They are woefully down in that. And that's got a little less to do with the overall talent than it does just playing as a team, right? So I think, that's where when you said, did you think you could be competitive? Yeah. If they were really good in all 4 in those areas, I think their record would be quite a bit better.
Oh, if they were.
I'm not saying it would be 11-1, or anything like that, but they could be closer to 500, maybe staying in the race and being a little bit more relevant. And as it is, these things have dropped them down. This has something to do with Will Levis because he is part of the turnovers, part of the red zone, but it goes way, way beyond him.
Coaches every week after games, coaches get up and they stand up and they say, listen, or either before the game, the week before the game, said, listen, we have to win. The hidden numbers have to be in our favor. Hidden numbers are turnovers, special teams yardage, whether you allow or you get, penalties, stuff like that. Those are hidden yardage that you don't really think about or count on. But if they happen in your favor, it's good. And it helps you in the big scheme as far as like winning games or scoring on drives. When we're inside the 10-yard line and we get a false start, well, that's minus 10 yards for us now. Now it pushes us further out as opposed to the defense jumping off sides. That's a +5 for us now. Now the hitting yardage is in our favor because why? We're closer to the end zone now. It goes toward us. The Titans are not doing themselves a service when they don't win the hitting number yardage. When they're not winning that, and then they're not winning in other places, they're never going to be a winning team. So at least if you're not that good of a team, you can't put yourself behind the 8 ball when you don't win the hidden numbers margin.
615-737-1025. Coming up next, Teron Davenport, ESPN's NFL Nation Titans reporter, will join us for his weekly chat as we break down the Titans' loss to the Commanders and more. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vinkin, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Time to tell you about Lee Company, proud sponsor of our Nashville Predators coverage. Nashville back on the road to Eastern Canada this week. Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa. We'll have all the radio coverage here on 102.5 The Game. Television coverage, of course, on FanDuel Sports Network. But Lee Company is a proud sponsor of our coverage here on 102.5 The Game, and you'll see their display all throughout Bridgestone Arena where the Predators return home. They've got great coverage when it comes to your house. Heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical. The heating unit front and center stage as we hit those freezing temperatures now. If you haven't had that heating unit checked, or if you've started to kick it on and you're like, you know what, this thing isn't working quite as well as it did last year, well, get it checked. Find out before you get into that crisis situation what Lee Company can do to find out. 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. That's 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. They've been servicing people in our area since 1944. It's a great company. leecompany.com. Check them out. Proud sponsor, Nashville Predators.
This week, Nashville Scene is celebrating Taco Week. Today through Sunday, more than 40 restaurants are offering $5 taco specials. Today, Garden Fresh Food Market and Taco Mamacita dropped off some delicious tacos for our staff, and we would like to thank them for that. I had one. They were indeed delicious. For more information on Nashville Scene's Taco Week, visit NashvilleScene.com. Big fan of Taco Week. So thank you to Garden Fresh Food Market and Taco Mamacita for feeding us today. On our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, ESPN, NFL Nation, Titans reporter Teron Davenport to react to the Titans' 42-19 loss to the Washington Commanders. Teron, yesterday I saw this first on your Twitter, that the Titans were penalized 11 times in the first half. It was the most by a team in the first half in any game since 2011. First play from scrimmage, false start penalty. Third play from scrimmage, false start penalty. We've gone over some of the penalty issues today. The second most penalized team in the NFL so far this season. In your opinion, why do penalties, and maybe specifically false start penalties, continue to be an issue for this team this far into the season?
Well, those are things that you should be able to control, and it's purely a lack of concentration. And there have been some on the receivers, and as a receiver, if you get penalized for a false start, like, you should be punished because you're not even listening to the snap count. You're just going off the ball. So you do have that. And it's just, like I said, it's a lack of concentration, a lack of discipline. And that's something that they absolutely have to get together and fix.
So Jeffrey Simmons said after the game yesterday that perhaps the Titans were, quote unquote, hung over from the good feelings that came from the win at Houston last week. I heard you ask Brian Callahan about it moments ago. I know John Glennon asked Brian Callahan about those comments as well. And you know full well that sometimes right after a game, guys don't have a ton of time to collect their thoughts and can sometimes say things that they shouldn't say, or they say them in a way that they don't intend to say them. But nevertheless, Jeffrey Simmons did say that. What were your thoughts on him saying that? And what were your thoughts on Brian Callahan's response to those comments today?
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't say that's something that he shouldn't say. Maybe it was something that he didn't think out clearly and say, but nevertheless, the fact that that is a thought in his mind and it was expressed, it does warrant cause for concern. And as Brian Callahan said, I mean, beating the Texans did not mean that team has arrived. And you look at this Titans team, they are still an extreme work in progress, and there's a lot of warts that have to be smoothed over and removed before things are going to be able to get right. And that's even just get to the point of being respectable. So for Simmons to say that, and then, you also have the comments about maybe some guys were affected by the cold. Those are all bad things, and they're things that typically come from a losing organization, which is what this franchise has become, right, over the last year and a half to 2 years. So they have to figure out a way to start stacking days and stacking weeks, et cetera. And it's going to have to start soon.
Yeah, you're right about that, TD. When you're not, if you've been winning, you can probably get a pass for saying, we were probably hungover from the game before, or maybe the weather could have affected a few guys. You may get a pass for that because they just look at, okay, you're a winning organization, so we'll give you a pass. But when you're not a winning organization, you're right. Those are words that you got to, when you get ready to make those comments, you got to think them out because they can then be used against you, even though you probably didn't mean it in that fashion. Because if you listen to everything that Jeffrey said, it sort of bled into, hey, listen, we just need to play better. Yeah, it may have been a hangover, but we just needed to play better. He was just giving what he thought was his reason why potentially the game went the way it went.
Yeah, and ironically, that was towards the end. So the video that I posted is like a 40-second video. And at like the 35-second mark, that's when he says it. So there's a whole 30 seconds that was overlooked, and that part was focused on, rightfully so, because, I mean, it is significant when something like that's said. But to the point of this team, like, they haven't won 2 games in a row in 2 years, like 2 calendar years. There's no reason whatsoever to sit there and get fooled, right, and lose that hunger because you beat the Houston Texans, who, by the way, barely beat the Jacksonville Jaguars without Trevor Lawrence for most of the game. So take that, make of that what you will.
Now, TD, answer me this. Tell me this. And I want you to give your honest assessment of what I'm thinking here, because I could be completely wrong. And obviously, there are callers and listeners that suggest that, yeah, you know, you're wrong, Mason. But okay, let it be what it is. What it is. My thing with Will Levis, he wasn't the problem yesterday, and I tried to, explain that to people. He wasn't the problem yesterday, but I am not going to get mistaken by okay play and say, man, this guy's doing a great job. Like, he's getting much better each game. That's not the case. Even though he's not making those mistakes that he made in prior weeks, it's still not enough to put your team in a position to win a football game. Again, it wasn't Will Levis's fault yesterday that they lost, and it wasn't his fault 2 weeks ago that they lost. But is he elevating the franchise? Is he elevating the team to a point that if they do have these sort of offsetting penalties or these mistakes, whether it be offense, defense, or special teams, our quarterback is good enough to put all that aside and help raise this franchise up and win close games, or games that, frankly, you're getting beat 28-7.5. Can he do enough in the second half to pull you out of that deficit? My thing was, it wasn't his fault, but still, I'm not going to get excited because he doesn't throw or an interception. I'm not going to get excited because he's completing, 10-yard passes, or he can complete a pass to Nick Westbrook-Ikine down the middle of the field when he's wide open. I'm not going to get excited about that. Those are things that a quarterback is supposed to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, to me, one of the best plays he had was when he was scrambling to his left and nothing was there, and he dirted the ball. That was, and saying that is the whole problem. I like in this situation too. So back in 2019, I bought an Audi, and I was really excited because I bought that. I wanted an A4 for a while, so I got it, and I'm like, okay, cool. But then I started driving it, and it didn't ride the way I wanted it to. So what did I have to do? Take it to the shop and have them do some work to get it to where I wanted it to be. It's the same situation right now, right? Because we know all the glowing endorsements of Will Levis, coming into this year. They couldn't keep the Will Levis number 8 cologne in stock. Everything was looking good. You got people putting him, on the same trajectory as Joe Burrow and some of these other quarterbacks, and here we are, right? And so the improvement, while it's happening, it's not to a point where it's like, okay, give this guy the keys to the franchise again. It's not there, but he is playing himself into a position where you say, okay, well, now there's other options you could look at as far as continuing to build around him and trying to give him more time. Like, I think he's bought more time. He hasn't proven that he's the guy, not in any bit. But unfortunately, like with this situation, as far as the quarterback classes are concerned, Shedeur Sanders is the only one I think that could come in and doesn't have the big time questions. And this organization, like, they can't afford to draft a quarterback with questions. So they're almost forced to, okay, well, let's give this thing another year and make the best of it. And the problem with that is, if it doesn't work, these guys are going to be gone, right? Callahan will probably still be around, maybe, but the front office is going to be gone. And then what? Now you're starting over. So there's just so much that is riding on this guy's right shoulder. And for him not to take hold of the position the way he should have this year or could have this year, it's definitely bad for everybody in the building.
We're talking to Teron Davenport, talking Titans as we assess where they go after the loss yesterday in Washington. Teron, one thing that we've discussed a little bit today is the poor play on both sides in the red zone, and particularly for the defense, who I think we're holding to a little higher standard, because I think they've shown the ability when they're on to do some good things. But I was looking today, they have allowed touchdowns 66% of the time. That ranks very low in the NFL. they just haven't been able to come up with that key stop to maybe, an example would be yesterday when they're bleeding badly, to just maybe control the bleeding a little more with a couple of stops holding the field goals. They get none in there. Why do you think this defense in particular struggles in the red zone?
Yeah, that's a good question, and not one I could really put my finger on. Last time I checked, I think it was the Cowboys. They were last in the league, giving up 75%. And it's just crazy to think that 8 out of 10 times a team gets into the red zone, they're scoring. Or like with the Titans, 7 out of 10 times. I don't know exactly what to attribute that to. I will say I've seen multiple times where the drive probably should have been over and resulted in a field goal, and it ended up having a penalty or something like that, to give them a new set of downs. You look at the Jarvis Brownlee one a few weeks ago, the pass interference where he picked the ball off and it was considered interference. You look at, obviously, the Mike Brown situation. But I think that's really, it's hard to put a finger exactly on the red zone struggles, to be honest with you. I will say this. A good part of it is the inability to pressure the quarterback, because everything's condensed, right? So you can only do but so much as far as route concepts and everything are concerned. And so it's sped up a little bit in the red zone. And if the quarterback's time to process isn't sped up, then there's going to be usually success. So I would probably attribute it to that.
So we're talking defense there. They're 29th. The offense is 25th, 50% touchdowns in the red zone. And, one guy that I thought maybe took a little step back, I was surprised, Tony Pollard. I guess that he made the nice catch down the field on the one play. He just didn't seem quite in the rhythm. That's one of the least productive games. And I think you talked to him after the game. Anything that you got from him that had I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no, he was upset about the early fumble. Mike Sanastrell, he was able to rake it out, and recover it. And I know that bothered him, but he said that he was just taking a one play at a time approach, and trying to remind himself that you can't score 28 points in one play. And I think it was just really at that point, like, you blink your eye and it's 21-0, and at that point, the regular style of offense, like, you got to kind of get out of that and run different things from what you normally would do. And a lot of those normal things incorporate Tony Pollard getting some carries. And then there's he fumbled. And now, as a coach, you're like, I want to call his number, but I'm not trying to see a fumble again. And so you don't call it as much too.
Now, did you get TD, did you get a chance to talk to Brownlee yesterday? Because listen, I think he's getting the raw deal. Honestly, I don't think that was a pass interference yesterday on the McLaurin. I think both of them were basically jostling to trying to get position, and you could have called it a pass interference on the offense just as much as you could have called it on the defense. But yet and still, even with that, I think they only have 7 DPIs for the season, somewhere around there, 7, 8. Do you think that's enough, or in a sense, for Brownlee? Do you think that's enough for him to change the way he's playing?
No.
Or do you think Denard Wilson is going to continue to let him play? Because again, this week and last week, I thought he was called for 2 bogus pass interference call when they shouldn't have been called at all.
Yeah, absolutely. He can't change the way he's playing. It would be wrong for him to do that. His style, I remember talking to him before the Vikings game, and we were just talking like on the side, no video or anything like that, and I'm like, what's up with Jefferson, man? Well, how's it going to be? He was like, man, best believe I'm going to put hands on him. Like, that's his style. Like, he's a physical corner. He wants to, get his hands on you. Chris Sanders always, I'm sure you faced him too, he always talks about Dale Carter, and how Dale Carter was as far as like playing that physical style of football and wanting to get in. You can't change that, because once you start to change that, then you take away from your identity as a football player. Maybe he could do something simple, like very minute, like, hey, look, wear black gloves, if they got black uniforms on. You know what I mean? Like, not wear white gloves to where it's like very blatant and obvious, but you don't change your game, because that's what got him to this point, and he can't change it. I would strongly recommend not doing that. And you look at the comparison, like a lot of people say, he's a young L'Jarius Sneed. And that's one of the things that comes with when you have a guy like L'Jarius Sneed that's so good at press coverage. You got to put your hands on people.
Teron Davenport, ESPN, NFL Nation, Titans reporter, joining us on DVD. Teron, great stuff as always. We'll chat next week.
All right, appreciate you guys. Take it easy.
Teron Davenport joining us on the program. 615-737-1025. Gentlemen, rivalry week in college football was spicy this past weekend. And we saw something around the country that we would like to discuss coming up next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingen, 1025-1063, The Game. So the ACC fined North Carolina and NC State, but they didn't tell us when. They didn't tell us how much for their flag planting.
Hey, this is D Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and no one else. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D-Mays, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. I see what you did there, David, with Riot, borrowing some music from 102.9 The Buzz, some 3 Days Grace. Stoneman and Company coming up next on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. But let's end the show. Derek just missed the shot.
Yeah, and I missed. Don't worry about it. I get it, Adam. Adam.
I just want everybody to know who couldn't see it that you missed your shot. I want to end the show talking about college football. Rivalry week. Man, was it spicy in college football this past weekend. I hope. I don't know how. By the way, we'll talk about more of this on Thursday with silly underdog picks. Look, Chris Sanders, congratulations on picking Michigan to upset Ohio State. I don't know how you sleep at night, brother. I'm just letting you know that right now. I hope that win in silly underdog picks, it's not going to hold you at night. So I'm just letting you know that, turning on your alma mater like that. But either way, speaking of Michigan and Ohio State, it happened in the Michigan-Ohio State game. It happened after NC State defeated North Carolina. It happened with Arizona State and Arizona. And it happened with Florida and Florida State. Flag planting. Actually, in the case of Arizona State, I believe it was a pitchfork. And not a flag.
Yes, it was. It was a pitchfork.
But
which has a nice pointy ending, which is very convenient for planting.
Right. I mean, in it, Sun Devils, pitchfork. I think it's creative. I like it.
It makes sense.
But there was a lot of flag planting going on, or attempted flag planting, because there were a lot of scuffles that ensued. Ohio State and Michigan were both fined $100,000 by the Big Ten for that incident.
Pepper spray involved.
There was pepper spray involved. NC State and North Carolina were also publicly reprimanded by the ACC and fined an undisclosed amount. But Willie, I know that this subject was something that you wanted to address before the end of the show.
It really bothers me that the general consensus with all of this is that both teams are to blame. To me, this is 100% on the teams who won on the road and decide to do the flag planting. I think all of those teams, to a man, know that when you do that, you're basically saying, let's start a fight. That's what you're doing. You know you're doing that. And to do it anyway, that's on you. It's like the fan who decides, hey, I've had a few. I'm going to run out on the field. What do you think is going to happen to that guy? He's going to get his butt smoked. And you know what? He deserves it. And you know what? He knows he deserves it.
Yeah.
He's going to get clocked. He's going to get taken down hard by security. And you're rooting for the security when you're in the you got your phone out. You're saying, let's watch this. I'm going to get a viral clip here.
We need Kevin Harlan to call the streaker
exactly.
as he did one time.
It's no different when you're that guy who grabs the flag. I'm going to go take this flag. I'm going to plant it. I'm going to go on the logo. You're basically saying, I would like to start a fight, and I don't really care what happens. That's the dumbest thing. For Michigan to get the same penalty as Ohio State, because you know what? I don't blame the home team at all for having that response. You don't do that. That is classless, and that is on the flag planting team. It's not, oh, hey, both teams, they need to control. Like the Michigan guy goes out to the podium after, hey, you had 60 minutes to beat us, and, we need to show more control. No. Your guys need to not do that. At least Billy Napier from Florida denounced what his team did and said, that is not what we want to be about. I apologize to the Florida State coach. Now, that was the right thing to do. The other stuff, that is baloney.
Steve Sarkisian actually stopped his boys from doing
it at
Texas A&M.
Thankfully, just get off the field, man. Get back. Let's celebrate in the locker room.
To me, listen, I understand, from a rivalry standpoint, it getting heated, because you don't like one another. And I get the flag planting. I get it. But here's the caveat to all of that. Like Willie said, when you are going to plant that flag, when the other team is still out there in the middle of the field doing whatever they do after the game, you know good and well what that's going to do to the other team. And you're eliciting that response from them because me planting this flag, I'm going to throw it down. It's usually the guy that really didn't have much to do with the winning.
Right.
He's the one that's planting the flag. And because, listen, they should do away with it, which I think they will now. They should do away with it in college football, period. No planting the flag on opposing teams field, regardless if it's a rivalry or not. Don't do it because it elicit what happens yesterday. These fights that break out, so much so in the Michigan case where they had to spray, they had to use pepper spray to get the two teams to kind of disperse so they can go in and get the people that were sort of kind of mixed up in all that melee. A few people got hurt, so they had to get them out of there. Again, this has no place any longer moving forward because we've already seen what can happen. This has no place in college football again moving forward. In Michigan, again, this is why people, like everybody in the Big Ten, hates Michigan. Everybody. Because they do things and then they hide their hands and they act as if, oh, we're holier than thou. Like we don't do anything. And it's just like the whole thing they did at Michigan State.
Spoken like a true Spartan.
Where the guy, we're in the tunnel going our way. The guy runs through our tunnel, skipping it because they beat us, skipping and Hewlett doing and all of this, and they hemmed his ass up. Okay, yeah. I don't condone hurting an individual, but when you come through somebody's space like you just got on Teflon, like you know can't
what
be
you're doing.
Exactly. Somebody's going to hem you up. Is it right? No, but you're eliciting that response. So when guys do it, especially Michigan guys, and then get on a podium like, oh, you should have stopped us within the 60 minutes. So you shouldn't get upset when we plant our flag. You are right with the phrase. You had 60 minutes to do what you need to do. You are absolutely right. But you also shouldn't have planted that flag. And if you did, you know what comes after that.
100%.
You know it.
I'll give you another example that I heard. These are great tales from the past. The Western Hockey League juniors. There was a team. Barry Trotz could tell you more of the details. I think Chris Mason knows this well. There was a team that would go out for warm-ups and take the other team's goal and the pucks and bring them back over to their side of the ice for warm-ups. So in other words, the other team would come out, there would be no goal and no pucks. Mm-hmm. So why do you think they did that? To start a fight, because they knew the other team would have no choice. Like, hey, you want these pucks? You want your net? Come get it. And they started a brawl before the game started. Because you know why? They knew how the other team would react. They were trying to disrespect him. They were trying to intimidate him. And they were like, okay, let's fight. Now, that is a little barbaric. That's a little hockey. But listen, in hockey, there are things you do that you know are going to start a fight. And in hockey, of course, you can actually do that. You can fight. But it's done for a purpose. In football, you know when you do that, there is going to be a fight. So let's not blame the other team. Let's not blame Ohio State. Let's not blame North Carolina for fighting and standing up for your program. That's what's going to happen. It is a natural instinct that you can't stop.
Especially when guys are in the middle of the field and they're coming out and you know the emotions are already heightened because they lost and they're coming across and you all of a sudden you kind of skippity-doo yourself in the middle with the flag in your hand amongst other players, and you plant the flag. Mind you, it's turf, so it ain't gonna stick. It's gonna fall anyway. And you decide to plant the flag with your stupid self. Then you do stupid things that my mom used to. You do stupid things, stupid consequences. That's what you're gonna get.
And the Big Ten is gutless.
You win stupid prizes.
Exactly.
Big Ten is gutless.
And you won a stupid prize, and now both of y'all are getting fined $100,000, and now they will completely outlaw it in college football.
But why is Michigan not getting $200,000? I can see.
I would have fined $1 million.
Give Ohio State $100,000 if you want, but Michigan should get $200,000.
They should get $1 million.
There's
and
one
I'm being
reason.
biased.
There is one reason.
A little bit.
Exactly.
One reason the fight started. One. The guy who's skippity dude, whatever you say. The skippity doer. That's the reason. That's the only reason. You know what? That guy wears a Michigan
And it's
helmet.
always a skippity doo guy. It's always that skippity doo guy. Say that fast.
And with that, we are going to plant our flag on today's program. I'm pantomiming planting a flag. I'm just glad I didn't say. I was so close to saying plant flagging over and over and over again. I didn't do that, but that'll do it for us. We're planting the flag on today's program. Stillman and Company coming up next, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Be love your